and welcome back to another episode of OHKO, a Pokémon VGC podcast. So much to talk about this week. There is a Pokémon Presents. We're still on the EUIC hype train, and we have none other than Wolfe Glick on the podcast. We got 10 regional championships, 2 IC championships, World Championship, World's Runner-Up, Players Cup 2, Global Challenge 1. Anything I'm missing here?
2 national championships back in the day. I think it was called an IC, but a global challenge equivalent back in 2020, I believe.
Too much.
A little bit too much.
It's hard to keep track of everything.
I mean, coming back from EUIC, I know I'm still struggling with a little jet lag. Wolf, how are you doing? How are you just doing in general?
I am sleepy. I gotta tell you, I got back and I've been sleeping enough. Honestly, I'm getting I'm in bed for 9-10 hours a night at this point, which is more than normal. And I woke up this morning at 9 a.m. and I was great. It's Saturday. I'm gonna do some work. I'm gonna get ahead. And I lay in bed till noon because I was just I'm so comfortable and I'm just so tired. And I don't really think that it's sleepiness anymore. I think my body's rested enough. I think EUIC just took so much energy that I'm in a real deficit, but feeling a bit better. I'm glad I'm able to kind of take this week a little bit slower, and excited to be back to getting out of bed at a reasonable time.
I think one thing that always interests me with your stories and especially Orlando or at last year, last second decision, and it's obviously a little harder to make last second decisions at international events. So at least this time around you had more preparation time because you couldn't just fly to England on Wednesday afternoon or something, right? So how does your preparation change? Are you always just team building and in conversations of trying to build teams and then okay, fine, then I'll fly to Orlando. Okay, I'll fly to Toronto. And is that process different than when you knew for certain you were going to EUIC?
I would say that typically if I know that I'm going, if I know that I am going to an event, then the process does look different, where I'm not really normally team building if I don't have a tournament, because so much I feel of doing well at tournaments is understanding not only what is good to use, but when to use it, right? The team that wins Worlds might not do well at the first regional when a new format drops, right? And so typically, I really kind of cherish my off time, my break time. I got back from UIC and I haven't really thought about Pokemon because I don't have another tournament for a while. And I feel the tournaments that I did go to last minute, the one was Toronto, where I guess one was Toronto, but I want to talk about Orlando first because that one I went to, that was EUIC last year. And then the following week was Orlando Regionals. And basically I'd gone to UIC. I was I thought my team was really good. And I just felt a little disappointed in my finish. I was I felt this could have been more. I felt this could have been a win. And so I already had the team at that point. So I kind of booked on a whim. But the team was already done. I didn't make any changes between EUIC and Orlando 24. And then this year, Toronto was kind of a last minute decision. But it was a similar situation where I had been building this team just for fun, for the global, I guess the grand challenge at the time. And I felt it was good enough and wanted to give it a shot. So I guess both times I've done last minute decisions, it's been when I've had a team already that I already felt good about, that was already basically done.
Nah, that makes just a lot of sense. And there is so much to dive into to talk about. So we're going to do a choose your own adventure. There's 3 different things that we have to be talking, 3 major subjects we got to talk about. Okay. We got to talk about, going into EUIC in the win. We got to talk about Paris Trap, and we got to talk about the GC, which you won right before EUIC. Which path do you want to go down first here?
Why don't we do the GC first? Because that's chronological order, right?
Yeah, perfect. So crazy stuff, because if anyone hasn't seen the winner's interview for finals that Wolfe had after winning EUIC, there was the big dun reveal of having won the GC. Nobody had known who had won the GC. It was this big mystery. Then to find out it was you with this same team. So the first thing to ask, I know that it was the same team. Was there any differences from that team to the team that you brought to UIC, or was it just carbon copy exactly the same?
So there were 2 small changes. And they were very simple. The first was going into the GC, I had Terra Ghost on Screamtail, but I never terrestrialized it ever. Literally in the whole GC, I didn't terrestrialize it once. And so I decided to change it to Dark at the without even testing it, because I was okay, well, I never used Ghost, and I clearly don't need to terrestrialize Screamtail in most matchups, so I'll just do Dark to get Prankster immunity, because I don't know, that feels more likely to come up than the Ghost Terra, which never came up. And the other was I moved like 40, 50, somewhere like not many. I moved a couple EVs out of Incineroar's defense into its special defense because there was like a couple times where like a special move just did a little bit more than I wanted. I think it was like 56 EVs if I am remembering right. So just like a very, very small change there. Everything else was completely identical. I might have like thought about optimizing it a little bit more. Like I think there was a chance that like the Screamtail EV spread could have been a little bit more optimized, but the 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks, the 2 weeks after the GC, I really wanted to finish the Toronto video, and it just became this like giant video that was way bigger than I intended, and so I actually just didn't have time. Like between the GC and EUIC, I played 2 best of 3s, and that was it over the whole 2 weeks. I was just like in writing jail for the whole time. It's funny. Sorry, I feel like I'm just monologuing now.
No, you're good.
Something I get told somewhat often is like people are like, oh, like you must have so much time to repair because you're like a YouTuber. And I'm like, well, I actually kind of have less time now that I'm like, running a channel compared to when I was working at a corporation, because like I feel like I'm always working, like especially when there's a big script in the pipeline. Like I'm often working till 10 p.m. trying to make progress on it, and like almost none of my work involves actually playing Pokemon. It's almost all writing, and so there's not actually that much overlap. So it was actually similar going into Toronto, where like I didn't have time to practice after that GC because I was working on the Worlds video at the time. So gonna try to finish EUIC earlier so that doesn't happen again, basically.
I can't believe they think you have more time, considering like have they not seen like the length of your videos?
Hours and hours
like,
of videos.
I think Toronto's gonna be 4 hours long.
Nah.
Actually, I don't think it's gonna be like over 4 hours. I'm almost sure, unless something very surprising has happened. Yeah.
Oh my god.
That is
a nightmare.
That is actually insanity. Yeah.
Anyone
who works for you, the best job security in the world, by the way.
Yeah, right.
But they also get like, I feel so bad because I'm like, Doug, it's 80 pages, and Doug's like, oh my god, never free. So
well, that's what I was gonna say. It's like you're kind of suffering from success, right? You're like focusing hundreds and hundreds of hours on the World's vlog, and then like this. Then Toronto torpedoes that, and it's like everybody, like you think you're getting done, like you're getting close to the clock. It's coming out like, oh, we're in the finish time, and then like the corporate boss just like slams more documents on your on your desk. Is like next task.
We have 3 wins backlogged, which is just crazy. Like, should not be happening. The good news is that the GC video is mostly done because that's like not a full. That's mostly like live gameplay. The only thing that really needs to be heavily edited was the intro, and that's like 20 minutes compared to hours. So. That one's mostly done, but I want to wait to post it. I feel like the order is important. I want to do Toronto, post Toronto, then post the GC video, then post EUIC. But at least, it's really, we have 2 big videos that are kind of backlogged.
All right. I mean, I wanted to then talk about, because obviously you win the GC with this team, very minimal changes. You take that same exact team and win EUIC. Did you know then going into the GC that this was the team that you wanted to end up with the EUIC and this was just extended practice? Or is there a world where if this GC didn't go too well with the team, considering how crazy this GC could be, it actually kind of scared you off of using it at EUIC?
I think I was pretty locked in, honestly. Like even if the GC had gone badly, I think I probably still would have used it. Just because best of 1 and best of 3 can be so different, and also because like I didn't really have time to build anything new. You know what I mean? Like after the GC. But yeah, basically I wanted to use it in the GC in part because I wanted to go for the win. Like I felt like even though I've already qualified for Worlds by winning Toronto, like I don't know, like the GC is a cool tournament and I would like to win one, especially because there's like 8 this year. And this was like the one weekend where I didn't have something else going on where I was actually around. So I was like, this is the one, like, this is the time I want to actually give it a shot. But also I wanted to use it as prep for EUIC. So I think that if it had gone badly, what would have been more realistic is that I would have used the learnings to try and modify the team in some way rather than like scrapping it completely, because like if I had losses that I could like at least look at and be like, oh, what went wrong here? Was it like close team sheet stuff? Was there like a fundamental issue? Then I could try and like, I don't know, patch the ship, but I don't think I would have had time to build something new. I think by the time the GC rolled around, I think I was pretty like locked into using this concept and probably something similar to the 6 that I ended up bringing.
Now, are you ever worried though with like how synonymous you are with Parastrap, right? Like, did you're winning on the ladder, and like obviously the people that finish second and third, like they're facing you, you're claiming victories off them. Do your friends you ever face in GC and they just happen to see a Fluttermane and a Gothitail and a Screetail? Like, do they DM you like, hey, I just lost to this Koraidon Paris Trap team. Was that you? Or like, do you say, no English, I can't answer you? Like, how do you handle? Because I would imagine if you're up at the ladder, not a lot of people are playing Paris Trap. So like people might put 2 and 2 together. Like, this dude is winning with Paris Trap. What are the odds that it's Wolfe?
Especially you, who actually gets like, people will look at like, hey, this is a Wolfe team or not.
Yeah. So Sierra, I apologize because I think I told you some of this in person, but for the viewers who were not there, I took several steps to kind of disguise myself as best that I could. My plan was basically to pretend to be a Japanese player. Like, that's what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to make myself appear to be from Japan. But the problem is, in order to access like Japanese characters in my trainer name, I would need to play through the game in Japanese, which then would mean that I would have to battle in Japanese, which would mean like, oh, photosynthesis activated. Like, I wonder what stat it is, And I thought that it was unlikely that I could master the Japanese language in the 2 or 3 days that I had before the GC to figure this out. So what I did was I made a new save file and I picked a name with only numbers in it. I chose the name 33-4, which is a reference to a very niche Japanese meme, which is there was a baseball game where one team beat the other 33 points to 4, which is just such a ridiculous score that I guess it became a meme. The Hanshin Tigers was the losing team, I believe. So apologies to all the Tigers fans. But the thing is, even though I couldn't have a trainer name with Japanese characters, you can still get Pokemon to appear to be like Japanese Pokemon if they're caught in a Japanese game. So basically, Pokemon display the name that they display, like not like even if I'm playing in English, even if nicknames are turned off, if somebody sends out a Fluttermane and it's German, it will be Flutterhaar. Like that's what or Flatterhaar is what the game will say. And so so what I did is I had a friend who had a Japanese game catch the Pokemon for me, trade them to me, and then I could train them up or whatever. And then they would appear to be Japanese because they were caught in a Japanese game. And I also chose to play during the time slot where most Japanese players were playing to again kind of help disguise. So nobody said anything to me about the team at all. I didn't get like nobody outside of like my friends who knew what I was doing. Like nobody noticed it. I think it helped as well that I only played 30 games rather than the maximum 45. I went 27-3, and that was enough to win the tournament. And so I think by saving those extra 15 games and playing against mostly Japanese players, I think I was kind of successfully able to fly under the radar. But I was worried about it. Like I had the same thought, which is like, yeah, I mean, I've taken all these steps, but I mean, it's still Paris Trap. Like maybe somebody will see this and think that it's me. So yeah, I was worried about somebody finding out but I think the precautions I took ended up paying off in the end.
I mean, yeah, it was the great mystery. I know you mentioned we had talked about it, and I think it's crazy that not a single person caught this team on film or anything else before it was debuted at EUIC, which is just the craziest thing at all. I'm getting curious down the line too if we're going to see other players like try a similar approach to what you did, and then it's just like spammed anonymous players all with these crazy teams, right?
The thing is, there is a real cost, right? Which is that I had to forfeit the CP by doing this. Like most of the reason most people play the GCs is not even for practice; it's to get the championship points, so that they can qualify for Worlds or whatever. And so it doesn't really make sense unless you're like already qualified, which most people would not choose to play the GC then. But I think people will consider it now. Like other players who have qualified, I think ahead of big events, I think more people will at least consider it and maybe they'll give it a shot as well. Ahead of future GCs and big tournaments.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting with the GC race, right? Because like we get to like 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m. on Sunday, and sometimes people are tweeting and they're like, okay, I'm in 22nd spot right now on the like, should I stop playing? Should I play one more to try to get top 16 or top 8? And like, I know when I played, I've never been up in the 1800s during GCs, but sometimes I'm like 1680, 1690. Like, should I play one more to get 17? But if I lose, I go down to 1660. Like, how do you handle that? You only played 30 games. You had 15 more available to you. How did you know you were comfortable at that point?
Yeah, so basically my general GC strategy is that you want to play all 15 games day one and just win as many as you can. So I did that. I think I went 13-2. And then on the second day, I think I went 7 I must have gone 7-0 on day 2 or so. I don't remember the exactly when, but basically what I did is I kind of angered myself by playing a bunch of games on the first day, like all 15. And then from there, what I did is I just started playing until I hit rank 1. And then I was rank 1 and I would wait for a while and I'd get past and then I'd play again, win again. I was rank 1 again. And then like overnight people passed me, but like the next morning I just kind of played, got to rank 1. And then I think that like basically I got to the point where at the end of the tournament, there was like, I think I got rank 1 at like 2 or 3 p.m. With the record that I would eventually hold till the end. Maybe it was like 4 p.m., but it was like still several hours. The tournament ends at 8 p.m. my time zone. So I got there like several hours ahead. And then I was like, well, like I'm first, but somebody could pass me. Like it's totally possible. And so I just kind of checked every 30 minutes and was like, did somebody pass me? Did somebody pass me? And the last 10 minutes were really stressful because I was like, wait, what if somebody was waiting to play until the end of the tournament? Like then I need to be ready to go. So I kind of was just sitting there, you know, refreshing, seeing if anybody had passed me. And I like thought about playing anyway, but I thought that like, because when you're playing these tournaments, you can't see where the people are above you. I was like, I don't like if somebody was going to play and they were in like second or third, I think they would have done it earlier. Like why wait till the end? Because you might need to play 2 games. Like one game might not be enough. And so yeah, I like decided it was nerve-wracking, but I kind of just sat there at first place and like decided to hold and kind of held my breath. And then yeah, luckily nobody else played, so I was able to keep it. But it was scary, and I did really think about, should I play one more just for insurance? But yeah, in the end I decided to hold, and I mean it paid off.
2-point difference between you and second place at
Yeah.
OHKO, which is so close. And
Very
their
close.
reaction to finding out that the person that beat them for the first place spot was you was hilarious, by the way, because they're like, you're telling me like I lost to Wolf because it was a big mystery, right? So that was a good one. But
That's so funny.
Yeah, any other questions we have about the GC, or do we want to move on to EUIC?
Well, I want to ask about like the team in specific, or the concept of Perish Trap, right? Because now not only did you have previous success with it, all of Scarlet and Violet, you have a crazy amount of success with Perish Trap in many different formats. And like my question, I'm gonna have us flashback to 1970s basketball. All right,
Okay.
It sounds crazy, Sierra. There's a player, Rick Barry. He played, and everybody who shoots free throws, you shoot free throws like this, right? But there was a concept called the granny shot or the grandma shot. Like a grandma trying to shoot a free throw instead of overhand, she does underhand, right? And it's very unconventional and it looks weird and it's probably hard to learn how to do it. But he had a 90% free throw accurate or percentage, right? Like he made 90% of his free throws he took.
That's wild.
Doing the granny shot. And the issue is that nobody else did the granny shot because it looked weird or they thought it might be hard or whatever. But with trying to bring this back to Pokemon and Perish Trap, are we at a point? Is Perish Trap the granny shot of VGC that like it is very clearly effective? It's 90% accuracy. You're essentially winning every event that you use Perish Trap with, but everyone else is refusing to attempt to play it because it looks weird or it appears to be difficult.
Yeah. Is the question? Can you?
I think is Perish Trap the granny shot of VGC?
Yeah, like why is nobody else trying it when it's so clearly effective?
Person
Got it.
can actually
like
the
one guy proved how clearly effective it is that he made 90% of his free throws, but everyone else still refused to play that way. So you're winning every event with this clearly effective strategy, and still nobody else is playing with the strategy.
So to answer the question, why is it only me? I don't think that people are like opposed to using Perish Trap. If anything, I'm sure there are people out there right now who like, you know, are like, wait, I want to try it, right? It's clearly working. I think the thing about people always talk about Perish Trap being like the most difficult strategy. In terms of like established competitive strategies like that actually see some mainstream success, I personally think that it's the hardest. I feel like that's pretty widely accepted, but I think that what people don't realize is that Perish Trap is not only incredibly difficult to play. Like I remember more so with the Toronto team, because that was more of a dedicated Perish Trap team, by which I mean with the Toronto team, you like most of your games, your primary strategy was going to be use Perish Trap. Like you had Kingdra and Arcaludon to kind of help position better and like take out the big anti-Perish threats, but for the most part you were winning the games with Perish. Whereas with this team, this EUIC team, this was a team with a Perish mode rather than a full Perish team. Like I had the option in certain matchups doing Perish, but like in the finals, for example, I didn't even bring a Perish Song user. And I think that like basically, yes, Perish Trap is extremely difficult. And in Toronto, like there were times where I was like, oh, I didn't even make a bad play. I just made like kind of like an okay play, like a play that didn't gain or lose me any ground. But because I made that play, I lose the game. Like I didn't think 4 turns ahead. And so now all of a sudden 2 turns down the line, I'm out of position and there's nothing I can do to kind of get back into this. So I think it's really difficult from a battling angle. Like you need a lot of foresight. You really need to understand where you can afford to take damage. Like you need to understand how to get your Pokemon in a position in really unorthodox ways. But in my opinion, the real reason why Perish Trap is so difficult and so like it requires such precision is because it's a team where you can't just be good at battling, because there's like nobody can build the teams. You need to have both the incredible ability, like the really advanced battling skill to pilot it, but you also need to be able to build the team in the first place, because like Perish Trap teams can look similar. Like the one that I just, won a USC with looked a little bit similar to the one that I won Orlando 2023 with. Like it had 4 of the same Pokemon. But like the sets were different, the moves were different, the Terra types were different, the stats were different. The last 2 Pokemon could only be those 2 Pokemon, in my opinion, for it to work. And like with a Perish Trap team, you need like every single minute detail has to be exactly right, or the whole thing's gonna fall apart. Like weird Terra types, like Terra Bug Incin, and like and like weird sets like Life Orb, Close Combat Koraidon. Like it needs all of these really specific pieces, in my opinion, for the whole thing to kind of come together. And there are players out there who are incredible team builders, and there are players out there who are like absolutely skilled battlers, but there aren't that many players who are kind of at that kind of peak level of both who also want to try Perish Trap, right? It's like you need such specific knowledge, and I have over a decade of experience trying to make the strategy work. So if you're just trying to pick it up, like you don't really necessarily know as a team builder where like what you should be looking for, like where, like what pieces you need, what, like it's I think it's a very unintuitive way to play. So I'm sure that other people will try it out, especially Mega Evolution is coming back, and Mega Gengar makes the strategy a lot more viable. It's suddenly having a Pokemon with both Shadow Tag and Perish Song, at the same time, makes it a bit easier. As it turns out, I feel so stupid that I didn't use Perish Song Mega Gengar at every tournament when it was legal. I did not. I feel like I took it for granted. But yeah, that's the long answer to your question. I think that it requires both team building and battling skill at like the highest echelon, and experience helps a lot as well in terms of knowing what you should be looking for. And I think there's just not that many players who have all of those, like all 3 of those kind of stat boxes maxed to the level where you need to be with Perish Song.
Right.
I want to ask then, like, all of that of what you said, and then how that applies to different metas. Because after we saw you use this in Toronto, I didn't think that there was any world that we were seeing this again, right? You had even said in your day 1 interview, like, yeah, said I couldn't do it, and well, the way you phrased it was like, this person said that they could, but he was and all that, right? So then I want to talk about like where Perish Trap is in like this specific mode, having it either as the whole team concept or just the mode. If it's always something that you feel can be adapted in a certain way for the meta, or if Regulation G was just a format that all along this could have worked, you just like nobody cracked the code up until then.
I think that it shouldn't have worked. And like I think I kind of found the one opportunity for it to work, which was that so the longer story is that in Toronto, I went and I said, hey, like, I want to use Perish Trap because I don't know when the next time I'll be able to use it is, right? Regulation H, lower power level. There's no Urshifu. There's no Shadow Rider. There's no Fluttermane. There's no Chiyu. Like, I don't know when the next time I'll be able to use it is because those Pokemon are coming back and like they might just be here for the rest of Scarlet and Violet. And then with, who knows after that, right? It could be Generation 10. We could not have Gothitelle or no Shadow Tag user. So I kind of felt like it's use it or lose it, right? But then after winning Toronto, I started thinking, and I was like, I hate being told that I can't do stuff, even when I'm the one who's saying it. So I got really annoyed, and I was like, well, who's this guy to tell me that I can't make it work? So I kind of just for fun started building. And I was like, I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, Disable Screamtail is actually kind of good. Like all the restricted Pokemon only have 1 move to hit it. Like Zamazenta, if they body press, you Encore. If they Heavy Slam, you disable. Shadow Rider, if they Astro Barrage, you disable. If they Psychic or Nasty Plot, you Encore, right? I was like, maybe I can make it work. And I sat down and I tried to make it work. Like I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna do it. And I felt like pretty good because I was coming off of the Toronto win. I was like, yeah, all warmed up when it came to making Perish work. And I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried and I couldn't do it. Like I legitimately I actually got really frustrated. And I was like, I can't make it work. Like I actually can't do it. And I gave up on the team. There's a message in a Discord somewhere where I said basically like, I think I said verbatim, I am giving up on this concept. It feels awful. Urshifu keeps beating me, like I can't make it work. But I think that obviously it did end up working because along the way of trying to make this Perish Trap team work, I put Koraidon on the team, and I immediately was like, Clear Amulet Koraidon feels awful. I don't like this Pokemon at all. And so I kind of found, by trying to make Perish Trap work, I found the idea of this Life Orb Koraidon. Like I thought, like, okay, like what if I maxed out its damage instead of trying to make it kind of bulky? And I was like, oh, this thing is really, really good. And so I think part of the reason Perish Trap was able to work was because like I had this kind of underrated restricted Pokemon that had flown under the radar, and that restricted Pokemon was basically underrepresented across the field in general, because I think it was kind of, in my opinion, it was the one restricted Pokemon where people hadn't figured out its strongest set, like the set that could bring out its full potential. And I chose, like, I just happened to do it at a time where the prior major event in North America had been won by Ice Rider, which is relevant because Ice Rider teams, like the non-restricted Pokemon with the best matchup into Ice Rider probably is Urshifu Water, who not only is really bad against Koraidon, but also the more, like, you can't use both Urshifu Water and Urshifu Dark. And so, and Urshifu Dark is a really, really bad matchup. And so kind of, I think it was kind of the perfect storm of timing and the fact that I'd found this really powerful Pokemon that just hadn't been priced into the metagame, which was like not only giving me, like, making my matchups easier across the board, but also like people just hadn't built their teams with it in mind. And so it was kind of taking pressure off of the Perish Trap mode. So to finish the story, sorry, I feel like I'm so long-winded. To finish the story, I took Perish Trap off the team, but then I was like, wait, Life Orb Koraidon is really strong. What if I forgot about Perish Trap and I just tried to build a team around Life Orb Koraidon? And so I eventually ended up with Life Orb Koraidon, Sash Fluttermane, Incineroar, Amoonguss. And I was like, okay, with these 4 Pokemon, I actually feel like I can beat every team in the metagame except for Ice Rider. Like, I don't think I can beat Ice Rider. And I was like, okay, I have 2 slots and I just have to beat Ice Rider. And so then I was like, well, what if I added Gothitelle Screamtail? Like, they always lead the Ice Rider. You can just Perish Song it, and then Koraidon can kill everything else. And that's what I did. And so I ended up finding more ways of making Gothitelle and Screamtail work into other matchups. But initially, it was just because I was like, well, my team is so good that it can literally beat every restricted Pokemon except for one. So I can't afford to kind of devote just 2 slots just because it's my favorite strategy.
Now, one thing I like with your team building, and like we looked at this, we went through like all of top 8 and looked at the teams and stuff, and we even, Sierra and I talked about how all 6 of your Pokemon have Protect, right? Yeah. And including Incineroar, who often does not hold Protect, and it's a very clear decision because you have a particular game plan in mind. So I like how you team build and, understand you're changing your sets because that's what you need on your team, not that these are the 4 best moves in general on the Pokemon. Compared to Grant Laird, who got top 8, where he had 1 Pokemon that had Protect on the entire out of 6, and it was just Entei. He had Choice Band and Choice Specs and Assault Vest and, a support Grimmsnarl with 4 support moves and stuff, right? So you both top cut the same event. One had 6 Protects and one had 1 Protect. So, like, how often is that a conscious decision when you're team building of like, how many safe or defensive plays or options do I have available on this team?
So for me, I like Protect. And ideally, I always like to have, there's no hard rules in Pokemon, right? Like in a perfect world, I try to have 4 or more. But I think I've had tournaments where I probably had 2, The thing about Protect is that, or like just having defensive tools in general, is that like, obviously, in a perfect world, your team just wins without ever being on the back foot. But when you don't have defensive options, it really, like, it makes it so much harder when you do fall behind, and it creates a lot less ambiguity for your opponent. Like, I think for me, this tournament was a lot about, I didn't play, on the one hand, there were moments where I played really, really well, and I think I closed out a lot of sets with really good play. But on the other hand, like, this is some of the worst play I've had in a long time. Like, I was like ending up in great spots and then just finding unbelievable ways of losing them. And I think
just
a lot
like
of
me for real. Dang.
some of my play was just like, I was like, I didn't even know I could make that kind of play. But like, I feel like a lot of times I would also end up in these terrible spots because I would make some boneheaded play, but then I would like really, because I had Protect on every Pokemon, I could make it really hard for my opponent. And I was sometimes able to kind of steal games that I had tried to donate in a sense. And I think that, like, if you think about it, if a Pokemon doesn't have Protect, it's basically like you've turned both your opponent's Pokemon into Urshifu. And like that really, like, it makes it easy for them, right? And I think a lot of playing Pokemon is about making the game harder for your opponent, because the more opportunities you give them to mess up, the higher the odds are that they will mess up. And so I think without Protect, they can be like, oh, I can just attack this Pokemon. There's nothing he can do. Whereas when your Incineroar has Protect, then it's like, oh, like, can I just attack? Like, can I body press this slot? Like, can I, oftentimes people will use pins, right? If you think about, let's say it was Terra Ghost Incineroar and they had, Chen Pao and Zamazenta on the field. They could go, okay, well, I can go for Throat Chop and body press. And, that will hit something for super effective. It will probably get a KO no matter what the opponent does. But when you have Protect, suddenly that calculus is a lot less straightforward and it makes your opponent think a lot more. So I like Protect. I don't think you need 6 on every team. I only had it because of Perish Trap and the nuances there. But in general, it's a move that I really like and I try to fit onto my teams as much as I can.
No, that's fair. And the last thing about just like the team building stuff in general, obviously, we're in a meta where we got to see a couple of unique techs. Obviously, Dill in the finals had this Iron Trends on the team, and not the first time we've seen it. They were very clear that individuals like Igati had used it at past events. But we got to see kind of a little bit more unique techs coming out, but not really hugely unique teams, except for yours. So I want to know then the balance of bringing something so unconventional to an event that no one else is really on. I like Boyd even on Twitter was like, hey, like Life Orb, I said it a while back, but like nobody had really adopted it, right?
Yeah.
So like where is that, okay, can you break the meta versus kind of cooking too much? Because I mean, you even said like, hey, team that maybe shouldn't have worked, right?
I cook too hard often and it just burns,
Yeah.
It crashes.
It's always scary. It's I should say it's often scary. It's often like you're like, well, nobody's using this Pokemon and I think it's good, but like, who's wrong, right? Like, is it me or is it literally everybody else? And I think that for me, a lot of that just kind of came with time. Like the one that really stands out in my mind was when I chose to bring Executor to my second World Championships, where I was like, I think that this is good, but like nobody's using it, and this is the World Championships, and also I was like new at the time. Like I didn't kind of have like the history of knowing that I could bet on myself. So I think that everybody kind of has to find their own calculation, and there have been times where I have definitely cooked too hard. So I think like with many things in Pokemon, I think that it is an experience that you kind of can only get by trying and unfortunately by failing sometimes. That being said, you're completely right, Sierra. This was a team that was basically outside the scope of the metagame. This was a team that people were not prepared for, that people weren't even they weren't even aware that they should have been prepared for in the first place. And on the one hand, this is the kind of circumstance I think where it should be most scary to bet on something weird, because you're not just betting on a Pokemon, you're betting on a new concept. And that's different, right? Like it's like, I mean, imagine I rolled up with I don't know, Solgaleo. It's like, wait, like we didn't even, like what is this? Yeah. However, for this tournament, I actually wasn't worried about that at all. This was kind of the extremely rare case where this team felt so good. This is the strongest, just like raw team that I've used since winning the World Championships in terms of just the matchup spread. Like my testing, my practice, it felt like my worst matchups were even, and my best matchups were illegal, like unbelievably unbalanced. And so having a good bit of experience with the team and having tested into, all of the top 7 restricteds and understanding that in the worst case, my matchups were probably 55-45 in my favor. And the best matchups were probably 90-10 in my favor. I was like, yeah, there's no question here. This is in this case, because the matchup spread was so skewed, it's what every team builder dreams of. And so with the exception of Groudon, I was pretty worried about Groudon. I didn't have the time to test against it, but I thought that it should be kind of difficult in theory. But I also knew that Groudon could, I think my prediction was that Groudon had kind of crested the Groudon ridge, and that, usage was going to be down. It kind of peaked in San Antonio, I feel like was the one. And I felt like it was downhill from there. So I was like, I'm not going to play any Groudon, but in terms of the top 7 restricted Pokemon that were getting use, I was really confident into my matchup spread, and I just felt like it was super in my favor across the board. So I wasn't really worried about this tournament because it was kind of this weird perfect storm.
Well, you brought up Worlds, and that was one of the things I wanted to touch on while we had you here, was your ability to win with restricteds, right? You've won multiple regionals with restricteds. You've won Worlds with restricted Pokemon. You won NAIC with restricteds. You won EUIC with restricted Pokemon. It's when the lights are the brightest, when the highest base stat totals, when the most broken Pokemon are available, you always perform at your highest. So how are you able to so consistently perform when the most variants, the most difficult Pokemon are, available to try to stop you?
I don't think I have a good answer for that, honestly. Like, I would love to know myself personally. Like,
You're really good at like GS Cup formats and
I guess I
restricted
am,
formats.
but also, it's like 2022. I really struggled in, and I guess I felt like the first part of Regulation G, I like got top 32 NAIC, which is like totally respectable, but like not bad. And then I did have a good Worlds run for sure. And I guess now obviously this EUIC run is good as well. But I think that, and this could be totally wrong, so take this with a grain of salt. But if I had to say, I think that when the power level becomes really, really high, it tends to kind of centralize the metagame. Regulation G is pretty good in the sense that there's actually a lot of Pokemon diversity, but the Pokemon diversity is because there's like 7 or 8 different kind of like restricted Pokemon that you can build around. But a lot of times, like most Miraidon teams are going to have Farigiraf. They're mostly going to have like Urshifu. They're normally going to have Iron Hand, right? Most Shadow Rider teams every Shadow Rider team for a while had Instant Rillaboom, Urshifu, Shadow Rider, Raging Bolt, and then the 6th slot was like normally a redirector like a Moongus or Ogerpon, or I did Farigiraf, but it was always like those 5, right? And I think that when the metagame becomes very streamlined and very like similar, what it means is that there's opportunity for Pokemon that are like at a lower power level but happen to match up well into specific threats. For example, like Screamtail, who like Screamtail's not, like it has the stats to keep up, but it doesn't really have like the overall kit. Like there's a reason we're not seeing that much Screamtail. But when you think about, like every Miraidon team has like both Whimsicott and Farigiraf who can't really do anything to Screamtail, and like Specs Miraidon, and like, I don't know, Iron Hand, who is running 2 fighting moves, right? It kind of creates this environment where you can find room for these more unorthodox Pokemon. And I think that's something that I'm really good at, is saying, okay, like the more streamlined an environment, the more opportunity there is for kind of weirder picks. And I think that's a real skill of mine. And when I think about winning NAIC 2019, Worlds 2016, and then this tournament, I think that's something that was a similar thread in all of them, is that I was using either Pokemon in new way, like existing Pokemon in new ways to give me an edge, or Pokemon that people hadn't really been considering before to give me an edge. And I think that's probably why.
Makes sense. So I want to start talking about this EUIC run with this team.
Yeah.
I think a good way to start it off, we did have our viewers ask questions that they wanted. There'll be a couple more that we have all together at the end, but I think this one is relevant for right now, coming out from Blue, asking if there was ever a round or a time that your EUIC run was over, or you felt like kind of iffy about it, or if you were confident the entire time. I know round 6, you ended up losing to that Cali Shadow Weezing team, which is disastrous to go against, by the way. I keep hitting it on ladder and I've not been having a good time with it.
Yeah.
Or like, did you just like, was there any matchups where you sat there and just like, oh wow, like this could kind of maybe be it? Or did you always just kind of have that confidence?
In the finals, after I lost game 1, I was like, actually, I think I hadn't technically lost yet, but I knew that I was losing. Like I had thought through, I felt like Doctor Strange. I thought through like every possibility, and every one I lost. Like I was like, this is they have to misclick the forfeit button angle. But yeah, and after the finals game 1, I was like, or when it was ending, I was like, oh, like this sucks. Like I'm actually gonna lose the tournament. But other than that, so that one was like, I know I was down a game, the matchup was really bad, and like, yeah, I don't know, I was a little thrown off because I had done all this prep, and prep is like normally my secret weapon, my ace in the hole, but I had lost game 1, and so I was like definitely a little shaken there. But other than that, I didn't have any moments where I was like, oh, my team matchup is bad and I'm gonna lose. But I did have many moments where I'm like, I am playing truly abysmal Pokemon, and like if I don't turn it around like pronto, there's no way I'm getting much further. Like I played 2 Terapagos matchups, and I mentioned earlier that the Terapagos matchup is like truly illegal. Like I think it's 90-10 in my favor, and both times I lost a game, and I like almost lost a second, and sometimes I almost lost a third. To be fair, both the 2 Terapagos players I played against were Marco Fierro and then Francesco Perot, I believe. Ciciot, I think. Yeah. And yeah, like they're both extremely good players, and yeah, like they played super well. But like I was like I lost a game, and I was like, wait, but the matchup is like, it's like it shouldn't be possible. Like it shouldn't even be like, if I play at a 3 out of 10, like it should, like I should be shaking their hand being like, yeah, nothing you can do. And they played really well, like absolutely to their credit, but also like I wasn't really happy with my play at all in either of those sets, and so I thought, man, it'd be really embarrassing if I lost this one. Not because the players didn't deserve the win. Like again, in terms of raw skill, like there's no shame in losing to those players, but the matchup was so skewed. And there were a lot of moments through the tournament where I was like, oh man, like either like the matchup was so good and I still found a way of making it close, or like I would do the work to get myself into a good position, and then I would kind of just like find a way of giving it away. And yeah, in all those cases, I was like, yeah, I was kind of embarrassed, and I felt like, yeah, maybe this is like what I kept thinking was, if I keep playing like this, there's no way I'm gonna be able to go much further. But the problem was like it would be like a set would start, and like I would be like playing like very bad, and then we'd get to game 3, and I'd be like, oh, okay, like I gotta lock up, and then I would like play really good, like really good, and game 3 wouldn't be close. But then the next set, really bad, games 1 and 2, and then game 3, like clutch up and like, yeah, barely kind of bring it home. So it was very much like we are so like it is so over, we are so back every round.
For the content.
I love that. Honestly, I feel like that's how a lot of players feel, right? Like depending, like asking how someone's feeling on the day is like depends on how their last round went, right?
Yeah.
They're either on top of the world or it's the worst day of their life. And I've also noticed that, like, or I just had a thought when I was watching the finals, and you know, Dill is a new player, you're as veteran as they get. And I remember you in Charlotte against Nick Donnelly as a new player, and you're a super veteran. Like, how do you practice against, or I guess prepare for those in between turns? You got 45 seconds or whatever to make a move, and they have so much more film on how you like to play in your play style versus a new player in the finals that you really have no experience playing against. Are you just trying to like, I'm going to play this, I'm going to make my decisions like generally, because you can't really play against your opponent's tendencies because you're not aware of how they like to play as a player?
Yeah. So the way that my kind of like ideal Pokemon, like when I think about the Pokemon that I'm playing that is me at my best, it's a 1-player game. It's a game where no matter what move the opponent makes, they lose. Like, because I've thought 2 or 3 turns ahead and I've planned for every kind of contingency. And so I think one advantage of that style is that like it kind of makes me agnostic to the skill level of the other player and I couldn't watch any tape, but I wasn't like, even if it had been, you know, a player, like even if it had been like Joe Ugarte, right, who like tons and tons of tape on, like extremely skilled, extremely good player, I wouldn't have watched his tape, because like I'm trying to find the right move. I'm not trying to find the move that beats Joe, you know, or the move that beats Dill. And the downside, by the way, of that style is that there are many players who are skilled at kind of calling out their opponent's tendencies, and for me, that's a real weakness. Like that's not a skill that I really have. Like I think if you put me in a 50-50 situation, I'm not getting it right 50% of the time. And I'm not getting it right more than 50% of the time. Like I probably have like I'm probably giving it to me like in the 30 to 40 range, right? Whereas some players, like they're doing that 80%, right? They're really getting those hard reads right, because they're really good at picking up on their opponent's tendencies. So yeah, basically when preparing for the finals, I thought I basically played through, this is actually the Doctor Strange moment where I sat down and I spent basically 24 hours and I played through every single different lead combination and different turn 1 and different turn 2 and different turn 3 in my head, and I could tell you right now, of the 7 lead combinations that I prepared for, what my turn 1 and like following would be, and where I would make, like I pre-planned my predictions. Like I pre-planned where I would make the calls, where I would kind of leave myself vulnerable to getting read, where I would predict the opponent. That was all pre-programmed in.
You really expressed that well in the Worlds video too, like knowing going into the match, like just, you know, they're Miraidon, I'm doing this, they're Ice Rider, I'm doing this, so like it's kind of the same strategy.
Yeah, exactly. But this one was even more so because that was like at Worlds, it was like the general Arubega, like kind of Miraidon team. But of course, like people could make changes, people could have different Pokemon. With this, it was for Dill's team. Like it was not a skill. Like I built it over the course of the 24 hours between top 4 and finals. So it was like totally tailored to things like, you know, I knew Dill's Miraidon's HP stat because it had been shown on the stream. And so because of that, I could say, okay, they never run any defense EVs. I know the HP EVs, so it's probably like based on this, the close combat is probably exactly a 50% roll to KO, and stuff like that. So it was yeah, tailored specifically for that team and that matchup.
I want to talk about going into this finals, because the most interesting thing about this event is players. I mean, you're Wolfe. You're this world champion, a huge YouTuber. Going into a lot of different finals or different events, it's people that are showing up for you, the crowd going nuts for you. You're always like, you're never the underdog in these situations. You're always like the big bad boss to be taken down. And then we get to Championship Sunday, And even like for that walkout, bringing you and Dill out to the stage, I mean, it's the UK. They're going nuts for Dill, right? Like, I don't know if like you can see it on camera for half a second. I was going to talk to you first as like the top dog going into this. And then I switched mic to talk to Dill because the crowd's just going nuts. And then you have this terrible matchup going into it. You're truly the underdog in this situation. And I thought it was like the most interesting, like, you are now in your opponent's shoes. Every other final that you're in, it's the opponent that has to deal with the crowd going nuts for the other person. They're the ones feeling down and maybe out. And now you're having to relive that, the situation. So I want to know if that even is something that like at some point crossed your mind, like you're that big of an underdog despite all these accomplishments then behind you.
That is an excellent question, Sierra. That is extremely dialed in. Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions I've been asked in a while, actually, when it comes to
Let's go, Sierra.
stuff like this. Because, and I'll tell you why, that's a huge theme that spoilers, that's a huge theme that I touched on in the Toronto video, actually. Like, this is something that I've been consciously thinking about going into the tournament, because in the Toronto video, a big part of my story, my personal story, was I was going up against Marco, who not only created kind of the viral Wolfe Cone Parish moment, but he is also the player that at the time many players were saying is the current best in the world. And I remember when I was playing him, I felt different. Like I felt different than I normally do. And I was like, what is this feeling? Like I don't feel like the normal like nerves. I don't feel like the anxiety. I don't feel the fear. But I recognize this feeling. It's familiar. And effectively what I realized is, oh my God, I feel like the underdog. Like people are saying that this is the best player in the world. And that makes me feel like the pressure's off almost. Like, because here's the thing, when you're the favorite, it sucks. Because when you win, people are like, oh, he was the favorite. Of course he won. But when you lose, it's a huge deal. Like everyone's like, oh my God, he lost. And so in a way, you have all of the pressure, but none of the benefit. And I remember when I was playing against Marco, I was like, wow, like this is how I felt when I was first starting out. And I haven't been able to feel this way in so long. Like I haven't gotten to feel like the underdog where like, it's the opposite, right? Where if you lose, well, I mean, it sucks to lose, but I mean, what were you going to do? They were the better player, right? That's what was supposed to happen. But if you win, it's a huge deal. And so in the finals, the crowd that's the loudest crowd I've ever had to deal with. And they were cheering against me. And so like, I thought it was awesome that Dill had the support. I thought it was awesome that like the UK community showed up, especially for exactly the reason you're talking about, which is like, it's got to be nerve wracking being in the finals against like a player who's established like myself, who has a fan base. And so I thought it was awesome that like they really, really showed up. However, like, even though logically I knew that I was the favorite, like I knew emotionally, like I have all the experience, like even though the matchup is bad, I'm still the favorite. When I heard the cheers and when I heard people yelling, like celebrating my game one defeat, it like triggered something in my monkey brain. You know what I mean? Like it my brain was like, wait a second, I'm not the favorite. Like I'm the underdog. And it made me really want to shut up the crowd. Like nothing against any of the individuals, but I was like, that. Oh, you want to, I'll give you like, well, you're cheering loud now. Let's see how this ends. And so I think that it could have really shaken me, like, because it was so loud. Like, it was so Crazy. Loud. And especially, like, I mean, when I make a bad play, I'm already beating myself up. And then when you have to hear, like, yeah, like, let's go. And you're like, no, I already know it's bad. Like yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I think in the end, it actually kind of helped me lock in because I was like, well, like, of course, I still felt the pressure. I still felt the nerves. But I think it actually helped a little bit because by feeling like the underdog, I was like, even though I knew logically that it wasn't the case, like, I think it kind of brought in some of those feelings of like, oh, pressure's off. Like, you know, I'm supposed to lose, so I kind of have nothing to lose here by going all out. So, yeah, it ended up definitely. I think it did impact the dynamics of the set.
I think that's so awesome to hear because, like, when I was watching the finals, it truly felt like you were in a way like a visiting team in a sports event, right? Like you were the road team. The home team was rooting and booing against you and rooting for their guy, and you're the underdog and everything. Like that's so awesome to hear your perspective. Like, oh, okay, you want it? I'll show you something, right? Like, that's like that killer mentality that you have and all the top players have. My last question before we get to the fun aftermath of the win, my last about the team is looking at your team with your terrestrializing. I don't know if this is correct to say or not, but to me, it looks like a lot of defensive terrestrialization options, right? Like Amoonguss to stop prank, is Dark, stop pranks, to stop Shadow Rider, Incineroar, Terra Bug, Screamtail Dark, Koraidon's even like kind of defensive. Like it's good for Flare Blitz, but also it stops the burn. Fluttermane makes you normal, so you don't take Shadow Ball from other Fluttermanes. Like Gothitelle Water, so you don't take or less damage from
Glacial.
Glacial Lance and Urshifu Rapid Strike, right?
Mhm.
Like, I don't know if I'm overreading that you have a lot of defensive terrestrialization. Like, is that a tendency you normally have, or did it just happen to work out that way? Like, you'd rather have some more offensive stuff, like back in the day, like Terra Fairy, Specs Moonblast on Fundamental, but this time around you went defensive with normal.
Yeah, so I think typically what I find to be a good balance is kind of 4 defense, 2 offense. Just like looking at the kind of historical teams in Scarlet and Violet, I feel like that's a nice balance. But on this team, like I think it was kind of awkward because like 4 of the Pokemon couldn't have offensive Terras because by kind of in a normal team, I feel like you kind of want 4 more offensive Pokemon and 2 more supportive Pokemon. But because I had Perish Trap, like Perish Trap teams in general kind of just break the rules. Like you have to be the things that work and make sense in normal teams, like not having Protect on Incineroar, like like having more offense. It changes when you have this kind of mode whose goal is only defense. And so normally I think the way that it would have worked is that I would have had the 4 defensive Terras on the 2 Perish Mons and the 2 support Mons. And then like Fire's a good defensive Terra on Koraidon, but because it works offensively as well, that is still an offensive Terra. And then Fluttermane, it's Focus Sash Fluttermane, so it should have either Stellar or Fairy Terra. And initially I had Stellar. But what I realized basically was that I mentioned earlier that like my matchup spread was really good, and that like at worst the matchups, like my worst matchup of the common ones was like 50-50, maybe 55-45 in my favor. And that one was Shadow Rider. And what I realized is like, oh, like of course in a perfect world, like I don't let them set up, like I don't let them kind of get off to the races, but sometimes I will end up on the back foot. Like sometimes they're going to play well, sometimes I am going to be in just an awkward position. And what I had found when I had Stellar Terra on Fluttermane was that like I was using Amoonguss, I felt pressured to lead Amoonguss a lot of the time and just Terra it immediately. And what was happening was that smart players, they could just protect Shadow Rider and like block the Spore into that slot and bring in Urshifu. And all of a sudden it was like, oh wait, but now my Amoonguss is actually weak to close combat. And so I wanted to, I was like, okay, like, this is actually kind of bad. I don't really know what to do about it. And then I realized like, oh, actually, first of all, some Shadow Rider aren't running Psychic. Some of them are running like Draining Kiss. And so if they don't have a Psychic move, then I actually don't actually need to Terra Amoonguss. I could Terra something else. And I also realized that like, and this is true also of Groudon, is that a lot of the Pokemon who have strong spread moves, like sometimes you can Terra and like, you're not going to stop the spread move, but giving them a reason to think about doing something else or not letting them get maximum value, like not letting them hit 2 neutral targets or even like a not very effective in a neutral target is pretty big. This is part of the reason why I had Bug on Incineroar, where like, of course they could just Heat Crash and KO Incineroar anyway, but like, if you have Bug Terra, you give them a reason to not click Precipice Blades, and it was kind of similar to normal on Fluttermane, where I realized that with normal Terra, Focus Sash Fluttermane, like they had to think about it. They couldn't just like, Astro Barrage, Astro Barrage, Astro Barrage, Astro Barrage, like shake my hand, GG. And especially with the Focus Sash, forcing them to commit 2 attacks into Fluttermane rather than like just, Astro Barrage and then finish off with something else was really valuable. So I think it basically had to do with my specific matchup spread and the fact that I had Perish Trap, but overall normal Terra Flutter was really, 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 really good. And it is unusual to have a defensive Terra on a Focus Sash Pokemon, but I think it was really good because like not only was it good generally, but if they Astro Barraged and you didn't take any damage, that's basically one more attack that they're going to have to use later to get rid of Fluttermane, which was a big deal because Fluttermane, even though it's it's not a Shadow Rider, it doesn't have a damage, it's not running Specs or anything, it's still a Pokemon that you need to respect, and eventually like if you ignore it, it will just chip down your whole team.
Yeah. All right. I want to be conscious of time, so I want to start moving on into after you won the event and talk a little bit about this interview, because you have just created waves throughout the community with that speech. Your first words after winning. And when we asked our Discord about questions for you, the most asked one was the speech pre-planned? And then my addition is, did you understand the gravity of what you said and how far out that would spread within not just the community, but in esports in general?
The speech was not pre-planned. I had kind of roughly thought about it. Or I guess what I should say is I started thinking about before the finals, I was like, what would I say if I won? And then I had this voice in my head that was like, Wolf, if you don't spend every part of your energy thinking about finals and you lose, you're going to feel so dumb. Like, what kind of idiot thinks about the victory speech before they've won the tournament? And so I was like, not okay, put a stop to that. Okay, what happens if they lead Fergraf or Urshifu? What am I doing? And so so basically, yeah, I had kind of I had thought about the concept of thinking about it, but then I stopped. And then I I don't know. Like I had so much adrenaline through me after the finals, and I don't know. I was like I I'd had this whole dynamic with the crowd where the crowd had been cheering against me, and like I'd managed to shut them up. And also, just like on a more personal note, like a piece of feedback that I get a lot, or like a comment that I see a lot, I should say, is like, oh, like Wolfe is so arrogant. Like, yeah, I hate him, whatever. But I always thought that was interesting because personally, and perhaps some of your listeners will be surprised by this, I really hate arrogance. Like, it's a trait that I really, really kind of detest. And I've always tried very hard to like not be arrogant. And of course, that's probably surprising because people are like, oh, he talks about how great he is, but like I don't personally think that I am better than anybody else because I'm good at this game. You know what I mean? I don't look down on anybody because I'm good at this game. And also, like, I don't feel like I brag that much, honestly. And I was like, why do I keep getting this piece of feedback? Like, why do people keep saying I'm arrogant? Like, I must be doing something. And I realized that just talking about my accomplishments as fact, like just being like, oh yeah, I won this tournament, even when there's no emotional weight to it, to me, because the accomplishments are so ridiculous, it sounds like I'm bragging about it. And so I guess I was just thinking about it, and I was like, oh, you know what? Like, I always, especially in winners interviews, I've always tried to be very respectful, very just very gracious, because I am so grateful to be in the position that I am. And also I know that in every tournament, like, it can always go differently. Like, just because I won, it doesn't mean that I was like destined to win. It just meant that it was kind of my day. But I've been thinking more about kind of this idea that I could be proud of myself and my accomplishments without being arrogant. That kind of, like being happy and being proud of myself, like, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm looking down on other people. And if people were going to perceive me as looking down, as being arrogant anyway, then like, I don't know, maybe just trying so hard to always be humble is not doing me any favors anyway. And so I was really fired up. And so I was like, you know what? I don't normally do this, but like, like let me celebrate a little bit. And honestly, when I gave it, like, the adrenaline was so high in my body, like I was so kind of wired, and like, I don't know, I was,
you could tell, like, you were, and as you were leading up to it, like,
yeah,
you could see it visually on you, like, oh, he's ready to go. Like,
yeah. And I, like, after I gave the speech, I was like, oh, I bet that was so cringe. Like, I shouldn't have done it. Like, whatever. But then I watched it back and I was like, wait, actually, it kind of worked. Like, it would have been a little smoother if I'd rehearsed, but given the circumstances, I was happy with how it turned out. And then I was like, oh wait, but like, I'm already getting like negative feedback. Like, what are people gonna say? But overall, I mean, of course, there's the the usual people, but for the most part, it felt like people overall, like, it felt like people understood that it was just in good fun, that the intention was not to put down anybody else. And honestly, I'm glad that I did it, because obviously I'm preaching to the choir here, but like, all of us are so passionate about like kind of growing VGC and growing the exposure of the game and showing people what's so wonderful about it. And like, a good way of doing that is having people with strong personalities, and honestly, sometimes giving people somebody who they can root for, but also root against, right? And I think that, like, just having stronger personalities in the scene and kind of leaning into the way that I'm perceived by other people, it's a bit of a heel role, but I thought that I was able to do it in hindsight without being disrespectful to others. That's how I felt. That was my intention. That seems to be how it was perceived. So overall, I'm glad that I did it, and I don't think I'll make a habit out of it, but it was fun, and I'm glad that people kind of understood that it was all in good fun.
Yeah, everyone is supposed to be like, we're all in on the bit. We know you're doing it as a bit. Like, yeah. And I think some of the happy little accidents of the finals, like specifically Incineroar was in square 5 on the graphic, so it happened to be right behind you. As you were, and people were making, you know what I mean? Like, you put your fist up, and then people made fan art of like you and Incineroar, like your spirit animal. It's so good. To like, I would just have this one, because I haven't really had a chance to talk to you last year. It's a whole question, but last year, NAIC, I was working with the social team, the content team, on like writing different tweets and videos and stuff. And one of them was when you won on stream, and your Incineroar knocked out Ditto to get the KO to win the game. Yeah. And they're like, oh, can you write something up for this? And so I was the one that wrote.
That was you.
I said, Wolfe and his trusty Incineroar, and then you go, his trusty what? So I was like, oh, that's cool. And then all the obviously Incineroar memes with you back and forth or whatever. I wonder, is there a butterfly effect? If we go back to last year, when everybody was saying that Incineroar was trash, and you were like, well, I have to prove everybody wrong now because they're all ridiculous. Clearly, Incineroar's the best. Like, would you not be using Incineroar on all these teams if it wasn't for, like, trying to prove people wrong? You're like, no, he's still the king of VGC.
I think there's probably, like, I feel like there's definitely sometimes where that's the case, but it's really, personally, I just think it's the best Pokemon. Like, I genuinely, that's not for content. Like, I genuinely believe that, like, Incineroar is the best, and also, I mean, somewhat ironically, it's the best for the way that I like to play the game, right? Which is this more control style, this positioning style. Like, I mean, Incineroar does, that's what it does, right? It, like, slows down the opponent, lets you bring in your Pokemon safely, like, lets you switch out and around, like, easier. So, like, I think it's ironically, I think that it's a Pokemon that really fits my specific playstyle. And when I put it on teams now, I don't do it because of the content. I do it because I'm like, this is the best Pokemon for what I need here. It also happens to be like a great Pokemon to use with Perish Trap because of the support that it provides, so that helps as well.
I want to know then, like, especially with the reveal that Joe Brown wrote this trusty Incineroar meme, like, how you feel like seeing all these Incineroar memes all the time. Like, there's always something, like, even before, like, the tournament, you tweeted out, like, asking for a Cali Shadow plush, and then Pokemon tweets the Incineroar holding the Cali Shadow by the neck against the wall. Like, what?
It was so funny. Wait, can we talk about, I thought I was so clever tweeting out, does anyone have a Shadow Rider plushie that I can borrow? Because then I was like, people are going to think I'm using Shadow Rider. I also did that knowing that there is no Shadow Rider plush. I think there might be a Calyrex plush and a Spectrier plush, but there's no, like, Calyrex Shadow plushie. So I thought that I felt like I was playing 4D chess. Yeah. The Incineroar, that's a good question as well. The Incineroar kind of meme and legacy. The way that I feel about it is that, like, I think that the Wolf and Incineroar meme brings people in the community together. Like, I think that it lets people who are inside the community feel like they are part of this in-group, like they kind of have this, like, in-joke. And although in many ways, I guess I am kind of like the butt of the joke a lot of the time, it doesn't feel mean-spirited, and so it really doesn't bother me at all. Like, I feel like I kind of, it reminds me a little, Ludwig, the Ludwig from video games, extremely talented creator. I remember I followed him before he started streaming. I just, like, happened to watch him cast a Melee tournament, and I was like, oh, this guy's really funny. And there was a period, it must have been years ago at this point, where, like, the joke was that Ludwig was short. That was like it wasn't a very advanced joke, but everyone was like, lol, short wig, like, Ludwig is so short. And Ludwig, I think, is probably at least 6'1". He's at least 6 feet, I believe. And so he's not a short man, is what I'm saying. And yet, like, his whole chat was always, like, kind of beating down on him, making fun of him, et cetera, et cetera. And I was kind of watching from the outside, and I was like, oh, wow, like, this is bringing all these people together. Like, it's like, in that case, he really was the butt of the joke, but I'm sure he's really, really smart. And so I'm sure it was in large part, kind of manufactured. And I think that, like, having a joke or anything, it doesn't have to be a joke, but having kind of this like thing that lets people feel a part of something, lets them feel like part of a crowd, I think it's only good for the scene. And with Incineroar, I guess I'm lucky in the sense that, like, I'm always using it, right? So there's always more opportunities, and kind of, it's kind of like we're rolling dice that, like, if they come up, good, then we'll get some funny moments out of it. But, like, the dice are kind of loaded in a sense, right? Like, Incineroar's good. I'm bringing it to a lot of battles. It's like, it's not like my favorite Pokemon is Chimecho, right? Like, I can use it, I can bring it, and then sometimes it's the last Pokemon standing that wins me the tournament, and that kind of feeds into the storyline. And so overall, I think that my complicated relationship with Incineroar is probably good for my personal brand, but I think it's also good for the scene as a whole. And so like, even though my feelings about the cat are not always the most positive, I think that overall it's, like, a good thing that it exists. It really is filling its role as the heal Pokemon.
I do want you to rest assured, because everybody's been talking online of, like, there's kind of the elephant in the room, the Incineroar in the room of, like, there's going to be a distribution Pokemon from this event, and everyone's like, Wolf's going to have his iconic Incineroar. But let's think about it this way. So we look at the distributions, and we don't have a legendary Pokemon. Restricted Pokemon aren't eligible for it.
Yeah.
Everybody thought Marco was going to have Charizard, and they gave Marco Jumpluff, which would imply that starter Pokemon aren't available. So you already dodged the Mega Incineroar bullet by seeing Tepig in the Legends
for now. Let's not count our chickens before they hatch.
So I just want to rest and make you feel comfortable that, like, very likely it won't be Incineroar. You might not be eligible. It might have to be. Who else do you even have? Like, can be?
They don't like shinies. They don't like legendaries and they don't like starters. So that would leave Gothitelle or Amoonguss. But the problem is that it would be really funny if it was Incineroar, so I don't think that we're out of the woods just yet.
Okay. And
like,
my other
could
thought
be
with Gothitelle, I always think like Ray Rizzo was the innovator, the creator of the competitive set of Gothitelle, right? It wasn't Shadow Tag when he won Worlds with it. But you've had way more success with Gothitelle throughout the history of VGC. Like, do you ever think about, like, he's the guy, he was the one, he created the Gothitelle stuff, but, like, maybe it's going to be Wolfe's Gothitelle, and, like, everyone's going to connect Gothitelle to you now instead of Ray.
I feel like the way that Ray used Gothitelle was just so different because it didn't have Shadow Tag, it didn't even have Fake Out, right? So
right.
It was just like such a different Pokemon. I believe my understanding is he used it as like an anti-Amoonguss Pokemon because it was like naturally people were running timid max speed Amoonguss back then sometimes, and so with just a couple points you could be faster than that and use, I don't remember if it was Taunt or Safeguard, but yeah, you could basically shut down Amoonguss. So I feel like just like people used Thundurus before Ray used it, but then I really think of kind of bulky Thundurus as Ray's innovation. For me personally, I feel like that kind of Shadow Tag, especially in the context of Perish Trap Gothitelle, that to me really feels like a signature Pokemon just because like nobody else is really using it. And so I would be quite happy if it was Gothitelle, but I'd be happy with Amoonguss too. And the Gothitelle, I'll give your viewers a fun little tidbit. The Gothitelle is 4 attack IV. It's not 0 because the rolls from Foul Play don't change. The rolls from Confusion, Self-Hit don't change. And the Fake Out rolls change just like by 1 damage point on Pokemon like Miraidon and Urshifu. And the trend going into the tournament were that these two Pokemon were becoming much bulkier. Like many Miraidon were being run up close to max HP. And so oftentimes, in theory, the Fake Out chip could actually matter in terms of whether or not it put the Miraidon into close combat range from Koraidon. Because Koraidon always one-shots both those Pokemon if they don't have a lot of an HP investment. But with max HP, it starts to get a little dicier. And so I was like, well, I guess I should like actually go. This is the last thing I did. It was like 2 days before I left, and I went back into Pokemon Omega Ruby to get a 4 attack IV Gothitelle so I could play through the contests. It took me like 4 hours altogether, but yeah. So
That's
it'd be
awesome.
cool as well to have that kind of little. It wouldn't be like 31-0, 31-31, etc. It'd be 31-4, and then the rest 31. So I think that's cool as well.
That's awesome.
All right, we have a couple last viewer questions, so I want to be respectful of time. First off, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question. This one's coming out from Aldrich, who asked this question for you before you had even walked on stage.
Really?
Like, he was already, hey, hello, Wolf. Congratulations on winning EUIC. It's the night before. Like,
Too soon. That's, don't count chickens. It's Pokemon.
He was locked. He knew. But he wanted to know, other than Perish Trap, what is your favorite team archetype?
Oh, that's a tough one. What is wait, do you guys know? Because I don't know. Balance isn't an archetype.
I mean, does Rain count?
I guess it must be Rain because I like
you
Politoed.
Worlds, NAIC, and then Toronto was also Rain.
Yeah, I've had a couple Politoed. I like Politoed a lot, but that's in part because of Perish Song. Maybe Trick Room. I like Trick Room a lot. That's like where I began my journey. Like my first ever season, I played a hard Trick Room team the entire season. So probably Trick Room or Rain, I would say. But yeah, it's like they're not close to how I feel about Perish Trap.
Your Emboar team was Trick Room too, right?
Yeah, that was that first year. Yeah, exactly. With all Emboar.
Right. Then another one, throwing back to starting journeys. A couple of people had asked advice for new players, or like if you had to start over in VG, like what would you try and do to get to close to the level where you are now? Like how would you approach tournaments and just this competitive scene?
So I think that kind of my biggest strength and the biggest reason why I am where I am is because I am so focused just as a person, like Pokemon aside, on improvement. And I think a lot of VGC is about like there's lots of people who show up and they're really good from the get-go. And I was one of those people too. But really what VGC is testing is your ability to improve and your ability to learn from where you're weak and from your losses. And so if I were starting out right now, I would say don't focus at all on results. Like you can use results as kind of feedback to see what you're doing well and what you're not doing well. But really the best advice that I can give you is focus on building the right mentality and don't lose your love of the game in the process. Because I've seen many players who like, and this is especially true of players who start out with really good results. Once they stop having that success, I think it is really easy to kind of burn yourself out and start losing what drew you to the game in the first place. And I've seen players stop playing because they had a bunch of success, they kind of lost it, and then they like along with the success, they lost the ability to have fun with the game. And so I can say confidently that like if you took away every single tournament victory, every title, every accolade, I would still be so happy that I played VGC, because I think it not only made me better as a person, and like made me more mature and helped me really grow, but it also brought me into contact with really incredible people who have just enriched my life so much. And I think that that's in part why I've been able to play for so long, and why I'm still able to enjoy the game as much as I am. So, and don't be the other piece of advice, I guess, is don't be solely focused on results. Like, work with other people, build meaningful friendships, like have stupid nights where, you mess around and you can like look back and laugh on, right? And really find the joy in the game, because ultimately this is a game, and of course it's important. It matters to many people, myself included, but that shouldn't be a reason why you lose the joy, right? Like, don't ever let this turn in. Obviously this is ironic coming from me, but it should never feel like a job or like a chore. Yeah. Right? But that's just what I think, at least.
Now my last one.
Bad.
Sorry, go ahead, Sarah. Yeah.
I just think it's like that was a really wholesome comment, so I feel really bad that this is the next question we asked, but they also were really adamant that this had to be asked. Sunday, after you win, there was somebody dressed up, very impressive Incineroar costume. They want to know your reaction to seeing that.
I wanted to run away. And I'm really, what you have to understand is that I am super slippery. Like, when I want to get out of someplace, I'm like a little eel. Like, I'm out of there, right? And I like the monkey part of my brain took over, and I was like, get out of here, get away. And I like actually started moving, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna like disappear in the crowd. Like, I can do it. But then like the thinking part of the human part of my brain took over again, and I was like, oh, like, they work so hard in the costume, it's so impressive. Like, they probably really want a picture with me specifically. And I thought, you know what, Wolf? You've had a wonderful weekend. Like, go take the picture with the Incineroar fursuit. And so, yeah, I went and took the picture. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all.
And then the last one from our Discord. People want to know about your not your sleep habits, but how much sleep you need for an event. Because listen, when I first started, I was 24. I could stay up till 4 a.m. and do commentary at 9 a.m. no problem. I can't do that now. I got to go to bed. And you've aged as well over the years, like me.
The casters called that out at the beginning. I don't know if you've watched the match back, but like right
at
the beginning,
ancient.
Yeah,
if I didn't love them so much, I'd shake my fist at them. But I love those guys.
So, how much sleep do you recommend for an event? Because some people say I win with 2 hours, I win with 10 hours.
Get as much as you can. I'm so sorry. In all of my tournament videos, I'm like, I didn't sleep the night before very well. And everyone's always like, wow, Wolf, you should sleep more. And I forgot to mention that I have like really severe insomnia, and I've had it my whole life. So like, I'm trying to sleep, and it's not working. And this tournament was especially bad. I think this is a large reason why my play was so messy, was because the night, like, it was jet lag, right? So I was so tired the night before the tournament. I got to bed at 10:30, and I'm like, great, 10:30. If I just make it to like 6:30, that's like 8 hours. Like, I'm not going to be able to fall asleep right away, but whatever. Anyway, so I fall asleep, and then I wake up, and I'm like, oh, what time is it? I look at my phone, 11:30. I slept from 10:30 to 11:30, and I went, that's not good. I got to fall back asleep. So I, tried, laid in bed for a while, eventually fell asleep, and then I woke up again, and I'm like, okay, it's got to be at least 6:30. Like, I must have made it. And it was 3:30 in the morning. So I slept from 11:30-ish to 3:30, and then I couldn't fall asleep again. So I guess in total, being generous, I probably had 4 hours. Realistically closer to 3. The nights when I sleep like 8 to 10 is when I feel way better. Like, there's no reason to be depriving yourself of sleep. Like, maybe you can do it. I guess I could do it, but I don't recommend it. It's not easier. And like, in general, I got older. You're gonna get older too. Like, build good habits. Like get rest, eat well. Like, don't like drink a lot of water. Like, don't make it like. People are superstitious. They're like, oh, I didn't sleep and then I won. Like, not sleeping is the link. And it's like, no, that actually, they're unrelated. No correlation, right? So, I recommend building good sleep habits. Like, if you're getting 6 hours, that's fine. Honestly, I think 6 to 8 to 10 is all, like, there's probably a range you can sleep too much. I'm never there, so I don't know. I recommend at least 6 hours personally. And if you can get a little bit more, that's like, I can't imagine that's bad. But I'm not a sports psychologist. I don't know what the literal ramifications are. All I know is that there were some bad plays coming out of me day one, and I did not sleep very much the night before. So perhaps there's a correlation for you.
There's so much that can still be talked about, but of course we want to be conscious of time. So, like, I know I'll wrap up any questions here. Joe Brown, is there anything burning in your mind that you're like, oh my God, I will die if I do not get to say this?
Do you think,
okay, there's one thing.
just one last quick one, because you made a video on Pokemon Champions, and we're going to talk about it afterwards and presents and everything. Like, do you think that's the future of VGC, or like we're still going to be split between main game and Champions is something different?
I think Champions will be a huge role in VGC if it's not the entire thing. I put out a video on this actually the day that we're recording this, just a couple hours ago, and so like basically I do think that that's going to be the future, and I think it makes a lot of sense as to why. I think that like if they put competitive battling into the Champions game, then they're going to be able to really fine tune the single player experience a lot more. I would not be surprised at all if Gen 10 used like different mechanics, something like maybe closer to Arceus' system or maybe the Legends ZA system when it comes to kind of player versus environment battles. That's my theory. I don't know for sure, but I do think that like probably my tinfoil hat theory is that Worlds 2026 will be played on Champions, because like why?
Oh my God!
Why are we like if they make a game that is only about battling and they don't have the Pokemon World Championships in the game about battling, then like I have fundamentally misunderstood something about how the Pokemon company works, because that would be a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Joe Brown fake fan didn't watch the video before the podcast. That's crazy.
No,
that's not a problem.
Bro, today was the first, speaking of lack of sleep, today was the first day I got to actually sleep in the last week for moving. So I got out of bed right before we started recording.
All right, you're going to pass just this once. But yeah, Wolfe, thank you again for coming on the podcast. Congratulations again on another win. Any final words to the viewers, or anything that you're like, I'm so sad they didn't ask me about this one specific thing?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I just, I guess if there's one thing I could say, it's just, I just feel very, very fortunate and very grateful to be in the position that I'm in. And like, I say thank you a lot. I try to at least, but I want people to know that I really, truly don't take any of this for granted. And like, I feel like I'm really happy kind of on the path that my life has taken, but similar to a Pokemon tournament, I know that it like was not guaranteed to end up here, and who knows what's in the future, you know, like who knows where things are going to go. But yeah, I'm just really grateful to be here and to have met so many wonderful people. And also, here's a fun fact. I don't know if you all in the audience know this. I am an avid OHKO listener. I listen to almost every episode. I try to listen to every episode, and I think I listen to almost every episode. And so yeah, I'm just like you all. Okay, we're all here together.
He's one of us.
Yeah,
He's one of us.
I think it's great. I think it's great stuff. I listen on my runs. Because I don't really listen to music.
You're gonna make me cry, Wolfe. Oh my God.
No, I think y'all are doing great work, and you have been for. I mean, not only here, but also in the commentary booth and in the host role as well. Like, yeah, I think that Pokemon has grown a lot. Obviously, like it's competitive Pokemon has grown a lot. It has really, really exploded. I don't need to tell you all that. And like, I really do feel like it takes a village to raise a Pikachu-shaped child. You know what I mean? And I think all the work that y'all are doing, and the other casters and the other content creators, I think that like really this is I feel like we have become the rising tide as a collective, all of us who have been trying for years, and it's nice to see the ships rise, I think is that expression. So yeah, I think that's it for me.
Oh, you're the best.
That is such a wholesome note before we get into some hard opinions about the Pokemon Present and go into a completely unwholesome note.
And trash Chikorita and you know.
I love Chikorita.
No, none of that. All right. Well, thank you once again, everyone else. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
And welcome back, everyone. That is such a wholesome note to end on. It's like, it never astonishes me. Like, it never fails to astonish me, like, the support and the love that's been shown for the podcast. Like the amount of people that came up at EUIC, like, I listened to the podcast and were just, like, so nice about it. Backstage, I had OHKO stickers. I meant to take them out Championship Sunday, but you know how hosting is. You do not get a free moment. And, like, backstage, they were, like, our staff were taking stickers. Like, it's just so nice. I think Marcos owns probably, like, a dozen stickers by himself. So you hear that from Wolfe. It's just always it's so nice.
Marcos does. I remember we got him
those stickers
in Toronto. I ran into him 4 separate times, and he said, "I haven't got a sticker yet. Can I get one?" And he said it every time to me, and I was like, "Sure, Marcos." And
he got at least 4 from me. He'd be like, "Oh, I lost one," and he opens up his Switch case, and the other OHKO stickers right there.
Oh, so cool.
No, it's very wholesome, and it's cool that like a silly little podcast that we started it's about like a year and a half, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to see like I don't know. It's just very cool. It's just very cool.
No,
But
I
now,
mean, it's just my thought on it. Like Wolf is just the best. Like all the, I think anybody that actually knows Wolf knows how awesome he is, and he's like a just really nice guy. Really great conversations you can have with him if you're just talking one on one. And obviously, online's a whole different world. People like to hate for no reason just because they're whatever. They're in their mom's basement. Nothing better to do than hate on people on on social media. But when you actually get to know him, like he really is one of the nicest people. We're very fortunate to have him as one of our as our leaders within our community.
it's the whole celebrity effect, right? You can cast whatever kind of insight or opinion you want on someone, but you don't actually know them.
Exactly.
And I think like with Wolf being the only real celebrity figure that we have in the community, because everyone else would be like niche celebrity, right? When you look at all the other like top trainers, no one else is really like has that same reach that he has. So it's a little different, but I don't know. Wolf, pretty cool, and definitely super, super grateful that he'd come on the podcast. And it's just always so nice. So yeah, now we got to talk about the presents. Because we were actually considering doing like an extra episode to just talk about reactions and stuff. But I think with the news that was said, we can fit it into the tail end of this episode. Plus, I have broadcast a few days leading up to this. Joe Brown's like, you got your work too. So this just kind of worked better for across the board. But yeah, I will say, which is always funny, because when I post a reaction video, people always accuse me of being a shill for whatever reason. I'm always very honest and very
the one
critical.
Thing you are, I could call you a lot of words, Sierra. I don't think shill is the one I could ever attribute to you.
Yeah, right? Like, I don't... That one always gets me too. I think it's hilarious. I am very critical at every stage of everything going on.
Just ask Quaxley and then call Sierra a shill.
Yeah. But I think going into this presents, I think the last one or two, I was kind of disappointed. I actually feel very okay with this one. There was a couple of people that were disappointed. I guess it's your opinion on if you thought the trailer was long enough, which trailer's a trailer. It's not supposed to spoil the whole game. So like those people are crazy. We got a brand new title. I wasn't expecting that. And then it was all the regular news. Like, I think that some people just maybe expect too much. I think overall that this is a pretty good presents.
Yeah, I would agree too, and it's definitely about tempering your expectations, right? We've kind of had the feeling as a community that we were going to break the 3-year cycle, like for whatever reason, to give them more time to develop games, or maybe something happened to certain games, whatever. We had a feeling that there was not going to be an announcement for Gen 10, right? So, because we still got to get through Legends ZA first, for God's sake. So, I very much lowered my expectations. I'm like, I'm not expecting a Gen 10. I'm not expecting a black and white remake, because hopefully they understand the chibi, just simple copy paste atrocity they did to BDSP, that they're like, maybe let's do something different for black and white. Let's give those fans something a little bit better. So hopefully that's on the back burner for like the Switch 2 in 2 years or something like that. So going in, I was like, as long as we get awesome ZA news and like they announce like cool Pokemon Unite characters and like let us know a new maybe I thought they would announce or show the World Championships or something with San Francisco, like just a little 20-second thing or something. Like, I had very low expectations. Did not expect a new game in general, let alone to be champion. So that's obviously the huge announcement. I think more than ZA, I've had more conversations with my friends about champions than the new game.
Yeah, for ZA, in my opinion, we get the game at the end of the year. I don't care. Like, I am content to play the game without seeing any information about it. So being able to see the starters, I think, was awesome. It would have been cool to see a Mega. Again, didn't expect it, so I'm okay with that. So we got the starters. I got to see my biggest issues with, and to recap the stuff at the beginning, there was just normal news. You had this Cafe Remix. We have a new Pokemon Pocket expansion. They've been releasing those pretty quickly, so that's awesome. There's a lot of Pokemon Pocket fans out there. Unite characters, etc. So all the normal stuff for all the other games. Oh,
and Pokemon Concierge deserves credit, because that first season was adorable on Netflix.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you have to watch it. They're like 15-minute episodes, and it's only 4 episodes. Literally adorable. They said the first 4 episodes are free on YouTube for people to watch if you don't have Netflix. They announced the season 2. Absolutely love that series.
Yeah, that I do need to see. And then they also did Pokemon Go event. So a lot of the normal stuff, concierge. But yeah, with Pokemon Champions, the fact that they released a brand new title that is actually this conversation is going to be a lot of, getting ahead of ourselves because
Yes.
we did get to see some little snippets of the battles. There is double battles. They do have mechanics from across different generations. That's about all we know. Realistically, there is also like the footnote thing that I've seen a lot of Twitter discourse about. That is not all Pokemon available at launch. Yeah. Okay. Why are we using that to criticize the game? That's more than fine.
God.
Like, I think that's, yeah. Wolfe released them, as we had said. Wolfe had released a video about it today. I do think that's also a good conversation there, specifically with how this could be changing the game going on forward and, like, also other speculative information. But I think that I'm very excited about this idea. The pessimist in me is really worried that this is not actually what we think it is going to be. That is my biggest concern with how little we were shown. Because I do think if they intend for this to be a replacement for VGC and for battling and kind of expand into this, I think that this has the room and the possibility, not even the possibility, this will change the game.
Absolutely.
But is this just going to be watered down VGC Pocket? Like, is this going to be the VGC version of TCG Pocket, essentially, to where it's cool, it's fun, but it doesn't actually affect, like, the proper game? Or is this actually the intentions of Pokemon to let us have our own game to be able to build off of and not be tied to the main release? Like, that's my biggest concern. But I'm just happy that they're taking a step to do this in the first place, which I genuinely kind of gave up hope of in the first place. I'm not gonna lie.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why it's so out of left field. And, like, being fully transparent with you, when I watched the video and I saw Pokemon Champions and I saw a 2v2 battle, like, I got emotional. Like, I literally started tearing up. It was like,
Same.
We as a community have wanted this for so long, and it seems like Game Freak, and it is Game Freak working on it, right?
Yes.
It's not like a side studio working on it. So, like, it's very much giving the respect and the appreciation and the attention to detail that it deserves and needs, because this will grow our game so much. Now, again, we are getting ahead of ourselves. We're talking in theory. We're talking in a perfect environment that if this is the new way to play VGC, like, think about your classic airport conversations, right? Where you say, I play Pokemon, or, oh, I'm traveling for Pokemon. Oh, Pokemon Go? Or no. Oh, Pokemon Trading Card? The TCG? No. Like, and then, like, I go, Pokemon on Scarlet and Violet on the Nintendo Switch, and, like, the TSA guy's like, it's like, you have to, like, they just have no idea.
Real conversations that anyone who plays VG
happens.
has had at the border, by the way,
Absolutely.
every time.
And so now you can be like, oh, like, you remember Pokemon Stadium? And then they go, oh yeah, it's like, okay, it's like that, but it's the official circuit of how it's the official way to play competitive Pokemon. It's going to be so much easier to explain our game to outsiders. It's going to be way more accessible being on both phone and on Switch. Like, people want to dog on the mobile part of it, but some of the a major part of the reason Unite has so many players is that mobile aspect of it. And also, Unite happens to be better to play on your phone than on Switch, which is a whole nother conversation we don't need to get into, but whatever. My hopes are very grounded right now because we have to wait and see, but the potential is absolutely through the roof for the growth of VGC if this is what we think it is.
If there is no issues with connectivity, which would be my one worry with the phone version of this game, and we do have crossplay, I don't see why anyone would be against this. If I want to play Pokemon VG on my phone, I either have to use Showdown, the Forbidden, or I'd have to to hotspot my Switch to my phone to be able to play. So being able to just skip every single other step and just load it up on my phone, realistically, it's a button clicking game. If we have cross-platform and no connectivity issues, which also connectivity issues in this game is still way better than any of the other games that are currently exist that have connectivity issues. Like, the other ones are reaction based. You got a lot of time in
this
VG.
Is turn-based, yeah.
Yeah, like, you're
seconds.
fine. So, like, I don't see why there's any world where we should be against, like, a phone port. Like, I think that's fine. Like, I think even if this doesn't hit, like, big outside of the VGC community, which I do think that this would be, like, this has potential to be huge with the fact that it's on phone. They just kept it as Switch. maybe that wouldn't be a conversation. I do think it has a lot of reach outside. But even if I didn't, the things that you could have with VGC for this by itself, considering we are looking at now, well, what do we do for another year-long format after Worlds? After Worlds, when we do get a new game, are we having another 4-month break because we wait for it to come out? Like, this alleviates so much of that. That would be really cool and interesting. And all these formats that people are like begging for, you would actually have the possibility like to go for it. Whether, Pokemon wants to give us those formats is a completely different conversation. But it looks like you'll actually have the possibility with Pokemon Champions, which would be cool.
Yeah, and I think some of my concerns are different than yours. Like I wasn't thinking too much about the connectivity, and so like some of my issues or my concerns are with Pokemon Home, right? Because that's a big fat sign that said Pokemon Home connectivity with Champions. You're going to bring your Pokemon you're going to bring your Landorus in from Pokemon Go, and then you can use it in a VGC battle, right? Like, if people kind of don't remember that Pokemon Go is really Pokemon Home is very hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes it takes 3 months for an update to all of these things, and you just are sitting there waiting for them to update it, which obviously is very difficult with all these Pokemon, all these assets, and then you can input it in. So like, how is our circuit going to be able to thrive and evolve? And we're going to have rotating formats with multiple mechanics available and multiple Pokemon available, but then like, okay, Gen 10 comes out, but then it takes 3 months to put the Gen 10 Pokemon in to Pokemon Champions. You know what I mean? Because Pokemon Home has to, and it's like, okay, our new DLC of Generation 10, okay, well, wait 3 more months, and then you'll be able to use Ogerpon, and then you'll be able to put it into Champions. Just like, that's where I'm very concerned with how the current mainline games are going to interact with Champions, because and it's just because maybe I'm a simpleton, maybe I can't think, like, my brain has always been connected to current official main game is what we play on. But like, now are we going to be playing on Champions a format that doesn't have Gen 10 Pokemon in it until 6 months into Gen 10's life circuit? You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think that is necessarily like looking at not necessarily the game release, but looking at DLC release. And kind of comparing that to TCG with when a set releases as opposed to when it's legal. I don't mind some period of time as long as there's still a way that we're able to battle. I still think it's a better solution than like when we're waiting for Gen 10 and we just have 4 months of no VGC. I think if it is a design that this is something they want to go for, I feel like they might be a little faster on that home integration because it would give a purpose for people to be using the new game. The thing that I think of now when you have a new game, new DLC, etc., and that delayed time frame is a lot of people talk about the games being like pay to win. And okay, well, you need to play the new game to do the new Pokemon, get the new Pokemon. They have the home connectivity right away for all this new stuff. That kind of makes it so some people maybe don't have to get the new game, or they want you to spend time with this new game, is essentially what I'm saying. So I think as of right now, there hasn't been an issue with the couple of months because you're then playing the new thing that they want you to play, that they're pushing you to play, and then you can bring your stuff after to your older games to home, etc. So if there's actually a paid reason, because it looks like Pokemon Champions is going to be a paid game, to actually make that transition faster, I think they would make it faster.
Yeah, I hope so, right? This gives them incentive to make it, to streamline that process. The other thing is, I think the 4-month break is behind us because I think it was just a very particular moment in time because Dynamax was so hotly, let's say people didn't really appreciate Dynamax that much, that they knew post-Worlds waiting for Scarlet and Violet, people would not, it just wasn't going to be worth the space because they were coming off of the end of Gen 7, which was having 40-player regionals because people didn't want to travel to Vancouver to play an old format when a new format was going to be coming on the horizon. So I think that was a specific Sword and Shield and Dynamax problem that Pokemon Now and the gameplay of Scarlet and Violet and Terrestrialization has been fresh enough and exciting enough to keep people playing that I don't think we're going to have a break post Scarlet and Violet until Gen 10 comes out, because we can just keep doing these rotating formats now. Like, they've handled rotating formats better in Gen 9 than they did in Sword and Shield, right? So I'm not concerned that we're going to have a downtime before Gen 10 comes out.
See, I feel like, if anything, when I'm looking at the end of the format, that it's just, okay, we're going from one game to the other. I don't think that it would be because, oh, Dynamax sucked and this, like, doesn't suck as much. Which also, we have another year of this, so this could also be a very, like, as of right now, we have, like, a year and a half before we even have to actually, like, look at that 4-month break. So we're saying right now it doesn't suck, but I've also, like, we've already talked about the discussion with people kind of growing tired of terrestrialization. This could be a completely different conversation down the line. I think, if anything, how big the VGC events are could be the one thing that saves it. So even if it's a tired format, tired game, we hate terrestrialization, boo-hoo terrestrialization, the fact that all our events sell out now and before they didn't might be the only saving grace as to why we have events. But I think in terms of, like, the format fatigue, I think it's going to get really rough after this World Championships, because, I mean, we've talked about the speculation of what this next format's going to be. Where do you go from there? If we don't actually connect to ZA and get those Pokemon, it's going to be a rough time. But yeah, I don't know. I'd be intrigued to see.
We do have room for separate regulations. I'm just really enjoying the show in the background.
Yeah, this cat's going nuts right now.
For our audio listeners, Sierra's cats are they're just going to town on the what do you call those, the towers, cat tree. Yeah, it's just very entertaining in the background. They're the best.
So also, by the way, if, like, for anyone who watches on YouTube, or even if you've noticed, a couple times I kind of disappeared when we were talking to Wolf, because I keep this closet door shut and I have 2 elastic bands tied together to hold the door shut. Because that orange cat, Leon, likes to open the closet and sleep on anything that's in there, which, like, there's a laundry hamper with, like, clean clothes that just don't have space to go anywhere, etc. He gets cat hair everywhere. And I forgot to close it. So both of the cats were in there and I was trying to get them out, but then I was trying not to be disrespectful. And then I look and he's just sleeping on the pile of clean clothes and it was just gone and cooked. So that's...
So anyway, we still have growth for rotating formats in Scarlet and Violet the way that we didn't in Sword and Shield. After GS Cup, after Series 12, we were cooked. We had already repeated formats. We'd already done one restricted.
Times.
We'd already done with Dynamax, no Dynamax. Like, we had nothing to do. The whole next year, we could do all of year 4 of Scarlet and Violet could just not have terrestrialization. We go back to just Paldea roster, no Terra, and then all DLC, no Terra, and then GS Cup, no Terra, and then you go back to whatever, have Terra at the end. Like, we still have room for the rotating formats. That's why I still have faith in year 4 of Scarlet and Violet, where I would not have had it in Sword and Shield.
I'm definitely not as doomer about it as I did Sword and Shield. I definitely do agree with that, but I'm just...
But do you think...
worried.
So, like, let's say we're going to keep rotating every 3 months like we did in Scarlet and Violet, right? If Champions becomes the new VGC, like, is it going to be like, let's say we start September of 2026, for argument's sake, right? Like, after next year's Worlds is Champions is the official circuit. Is that going to be like, okay, for 3 months we're going to play with Terra, and then 3 months later, Terra's not legal, but Megas are legal. And then 3 months after that, Megas and Terra are legal. Like, are they...
I don't think Megas are coming to Scarlet and Violet. I do not think that there is going to be a single world where Megas are legal. Oh, for Champions. Okay.
I'm saying, like, are they going to use the fact that Champions has multiple game mechanics in it? Are they going to intertwine them?
That's a question for even when Champions comes out. If we're looking at a World Championships that we think for San Francisco 2026 that it's going to be held on Pokemon Champions, I think there is a world where that conversation can be opened. I also think that there's a world, maybe we only do like, there is conversations there. I think that there is a world, like, I definitely think there's a possibility we do get Champions for 2026 Worlds. Do not get me wrong. But if we're, like, talking on, like, current format, all this other stuff, and the fact that the game's in development, I pretty geared up for 26 to be on Scarlet and Violet still. And then beyond that, I don't know if they're going to do cross mechanic gameplay until later within formats. So we wouldn't see terrestrialization in Megas for couple years, which would then
Because Gen
also be
10's
when we
gonna have a
introduce other
mechanic,
things.
right? Gen 10's going to have a gimmick. So, like, are we going to play Gen 10, and then is the gimmick going to be available in Champions at the same time, or are we going to have to wait for them to insert the gimmick into Champions? So, like, we're going to be playing two different interactions of Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like, that's my concern.
We're getting so far down this rabbit hole of theoreticals, it's not even funny. I think that the current gimmick, like, despite us looking at Champions as a way to be off of the main series, I do think we're going to be heavily tied with what is happening in the main series. Looking at DLCs, the Pokédexes that are coming out, etc. I think that there's going to be side rules that you can then have a lot more of these options. And I think that when Gen 10 comes out, that we're going to be playing a format that has the Gen 10 mechanic, no terrestrialization, small possibility of megas, which I still also doubt.
Yeah.
But it'll be, okay, Gen 10 came out, Champions, we're doing what Gen 10's doing. Then a year down the line, okay, we're going to do what Gen 10's doing and have megas. I think that with ZA coming out, that there's also a world where Gen 10 just naturally includes megas. I'm not going to lie. I think that there is the possibility for later on in the game. When you look at Sun and Moon, like they had megas, you know?
Right.
So like we are looking at a possibility with them making this big reintroduction to megas, that it isn't just a one time.
Yeah, I think
we're like so far in hypotheticals.
But this is the fun. This is the fun of being a Pokemon fan, right? These speculation times between games are some of the most fun. I'm literally
sipping the lemonade right now down these hypotheticals. You know,
like think about when the new generation comes out, right? And we only see what are the names? Sprigatito. I'm just playing Quaxley and Fuecoco, right? Think about how much fun you had talking to your friends, like, man, what if he's going to be a fire ground type? Oh my god, could you imagine water dragon?
Odds that this Tepig, by the way, is going to be a firefighting or a fire ghost like every other fire.
Exactly. It's so, like, this is so much fun with it. Like, you're just talking with your friends, thinking of good, oh my god, give Meganium Grass Fairy with the triage and give it Calm Mind and, like, all these things. Like, this is what's fun. Like, obviously we love playing Pokemon, we love playing the games, and we love playing VGC, but, like, these other times, these downtimes where we're being drip fed information is so much fun as a fan that, like, I don't mind that we're to the moon right now when we're thinking too far in advance on Champions. And what if is it going to have Gen 10's gimmick with megas, or is Z moves and Terra going to be legal at the same time? Like, this is the fun conversations to me.
Which then brings me back to, and what if none of it matters? What if this is TCG Pocket, but for VG? We just have VGC Pocket. Anything goes, have fun. This will never mean anything.
Okay, so if that's our conversation right now, like, my hot take is if Champions is just VGC Pocket, that will absolutely be a detriment to the competitive Pokemon video game. There's a difference with TCG and TCG Pocket where the trading card game is so popular and the game is so different where, like, your Arceus is doing 30 damage or whatever in Pocket compared to 300 damage in the TCG, that, like, they're two different worlds and they're two different audiences. Like, it's very much easier. I have friends that have either only ever casually played Pokemon, or they only played back in the day, or, like, they saw Pocket and now them and their girlfriend or them and their cousins, like, they're back in on Pokemon for the first time in 15 years. And you can play Pocket that way and still enjoy it. I don't know if I'm wrong. I don't think you can casually play VGC. You know what I mean? It's much easier to casually play Pocket than it is to casually play VGC. So if they do throw a curveball on us and Champions is just simplified VGC, I think that's going to be really bad for our game.
They'd be looking at, like, Pokemon Stadium-esque, where it's given Pokemon, given movesets, fixed stats, that's it. Which I do think would be a detriment, which is what I'm worried about. That's what I'm worried about. Like I said, I have high hopes to the moon, but I am, you know how we were, like, talking about, like, going into the presents, we had no expectations, so then we're, like, happy. It's like the opposite when talking about Champions, because I have every expectation in the world. So, like, if it actually is just VGC Pocket, I'm gonna cry myself to sleep for, like, the next, like, 3 years. Like, I don't know.
The other issue where I'm concerned, I wasn't even thinking about Pocket. My concern, because like, all right, let's have our conversation about Showdown right now, right? Let's just try to get over it quickly, right? We're not gonna like act like it doesn't exist. And everyone's saying the death of Showdown, rip Showdown, and like, oh, we don't need it anymore. If a part of the success and the appeal to Showdown is the ease of access of trying different Pokemon and different builds quickly. If Champions does not have that, and Champions does not have a team builder where you can just swap teams around, and Champions does not have Eevee and Ivy changing where you can swap things around, then Showdown is not dead, because that is not what Champions is not filling the hole that Showdown is currently providing. You know what I mean? And from my expectations and how Game Freak operates, where we don't even know what effort values and individual values or whatever are when they can't even say them and you remember back in the day would say, oh, this Pokemon is likely to be trained very fast instead of saying timid or whatever, right? I don't think Champions is going to be transparent enough to give us sliders and let us change teams around. Yeah. So I still think Showdown is not going to be affected by Champions.
I don't think I think even at the end of it, if Champions did have that stuff, which I also agree, I would love if we had a world where we did. I do not think that world is happening. So I think that they'd be able to coexist, but I think if Champions even had it, like, I think Showdown still exists because you have all the different formats, all the different modes, you have the ability to talk with people. Like, I think that they could coexist. Whether like that is something that is in the cards, I don't know. But I think that like Showdown's just such a valuable tool that it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I think at this point it's too established within, unless something crazy happened, it's too established within the community's team building preparations, and I think it's like kind of beneficial. I don't know how much of a rabbit hole you want to go down here, but like it helps grow the game because somebody doesn't have to breed their Pokemon and put all the Eevees and Ivies in and yada yada yada. Like I think. Yeah, I don't think that this game automatically is the death of Showdown the way that we've seen many tweets of people saying that it is.
Yeah, I think people are rightfully worried for the implications of Pokemon Champions because there is a lot of very serious implications. And if the game is not implemented right, it could make or break the game, right? When you're looking at the formatting, you're looking at if this is taking over our circuit, how aligned are we on other stuff? What are we looking at for how the Pokemon are made? Is this going to kill Showdown? Like, there's a lot of scary things that this game can do. And yeah, I don't blame people for being worried. I'm very optimistic still. I think the fact that they said in development, they didn't give a date, they're not doing any of that, makes me believe that they want to do this right. And they're not putting a time frame on it for that reason.
Yeah.
And that they want to make sure it's implemented correctly within the scene if it is the intention it's taking over.
And then the other part too, like logically, a lot of people saying, oh, at Worlds, they're going to announce that we're playing on Champions. It's like, well, that's not really how the marketing works, right? Like you can't on August 17th say, by the way, September 1st, everything is champion. Every format is Champions moving forward. Like you can announce that, and then 2 weeks later the game comes out. Like there still needs to be build up to the game and other marketing things, right? So that's why I think it is more likely that at Worlds, no matter what, we're gonna get something, even if it's like I don't know, showing more gameplay and more Pokemon or whatever. I think we are at least getting Pokemon Champions Flash 2026 or something like that, and they tell us a date, and it, maybe next year. At some point, they tell us an exact date, but they'll give us a release window at Worlds this year. I don't think, because I have seen conversations, will next season be on Champions? I think there's like, if any chance, I think it is a incredibly low chance that next season is it. I think 2026-7, right, calendar year-wise. It's hard to explain because we go over 2 years or whatever.
Yeah. After San Francisco, I think it'll be moved.
That's a better way to put it. I think post San Francisco is very likely to be the Champions timeline.
Yeah, no, that would make sense. Like, I do think that there is a possibility of a world where San Fran is, but but that would be a switch of games mid-season.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that it would be any dramatic format changes. I think if anything, it would be something that happens later into the season after ZA drops to be then aligned with like Pokemon going into the game. But again, small chance. I don't it's a possibility. I do think that getting information at Worlds for more information, a date, San Fran after San Fran is then like played on it.
I think the other thing, I've had friends reach out to me, and they're like, "Oh, how is ZA going to impact VGC?" And it's like, well, it doesn't, but it also does, right? The way that Arceus, Arceus was not legal. That we did not play VGC on Arceus. We did not play VGC on Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, right? So it doesn't affect VGC. But it also does, because the new regional variants and the new megas and all these things will eventually become legal at some point in VGC. But that was another issue with home, right? When Legends Arceus came out in January, I think, of that year, and then Scarlet and Violet came out in November at the end of the year. The home was not accessible. You couldn't take your Ursaluna or your Hisui and Lilligant right away and put them into Scarlet and Violet. You had to wait for a DLC update to bring them in. That's why they were legal for, what was that, Regulation D, right? Our first Worlds tournament was when the first time. No. We couldn't use the Hisuian Pokemon until D. Because that's when I used the weird
C was the perfect format that would have been amazing if Worlds was in.
Yes. Yeah. Because remember Reg D, we had the Weird Ear, Heatran.
No. I'm getting my formats
and
wrong.
Ursaluna. Yeah. So like
Reg C, the best, by the way. I missed that.
Yeah, rest in peace, Reg C. So Scarlet and Violet launches November, and you can't use the Pokemon that came out 10 months prior until, what was that, July of it's like 6-7 months later, but those Pokemon have already been out for 17 months and they still had not had home interaction with Scarlet and Violet. Like, that's really my concern, is the pace of how home is going to integrate with Champions. Like, I keep hammering it home, but
I really do think that'll be a non-issue. I do think that if they're looking at more home compatible things, if they're making it so our circuit is reliant on Champions, I don't think it's an issue. I think that's going to be one of those things that they figure out. I definitely think that there's right for to be concerned. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's an invalid concern. My personal opinion is I don't think that they would go through all of that, and go through with all of this if they were still going to have these super delayed cycles and just be like ruining VG in the process.
Yeah. I'm also trying to think, was Reg, just a little side tangent, do you think Reg C was the best format of Scarlet and Violet? Is that your stance? Or?
I loved Reg C. Like, you still had the paradoxes, which was fun.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't have like too overpowered of Pokemon. You didn't have the Urshis. You didn't have a bunch of these other legendaries. Obviously, no restricted. Way before that, I thought it was a lot of fun. It is also the format where Slitherwing was actually decently viable. Like, not like viable, but like you could play a Sun team with Slitherwing and then Chien-Pao and like these other like little bits. I played a Sun team with
putting a lot of work in that sentence.
Hey, when I played GC with the team, the people were doing the disconnect glitch on me. I played 25 matches and I won 23 of the 25 with Slitherwing. The reason I say won is because I'd be in a winning board state and then they would pull the disconnect thing. Yeah. So like you technically don't, but like they're not pulling the disconnect thing if they're winning, right? So
right.
Yeah, I'm just saying it was the best, but yeah, unfortunate.
I don't know. I think if I had to vote, I think I might say Regulation E with the second DLC with Ogerpon, and that's when Hisui and Arcanine was really good. And like, I know we don't like how good Urshifu was, but like Ogerpon Wellspring was really fun, and I just think that format overall was probably my most enjoyable time, like watching and casting Pokemon 2, because those are two different things too, right? What do we enjoy playing the most versus what do we enjoy casting the most? And I think that was a really fun couple of months.
I think that was okay, but I'll always spot my heart Reg C. But anything else about Champions? Like, is there any further down this rabbit hole we want to go? Do you think there's going to be trainers and a story mode and any? Because like even Pokemon Stadium back in the day kind of had a story-ish, right? You had to go through the different gym leaders to get to the end, like, or is it literally just you start the game and hit battle? Like, will there be a story or no? It'll be the same as Pokemon Stadium, as well as like Pokken Tournament for anyone who's played that, to where there is semi of a story mode. It is reliant on the battling aspect of it, but it isn't like you just hop in and battle. So
yeah, I can't even begin to tell you how much money I am going to spend on my avatar's drip in that game.
Yeah, let's talk. Like, actually, this is a big conversation for this game, because My initial thoughts with Champions was, like, this was not based off of anything. This was just my imagination with Unite. I thought this was going to be a free game, which would then open up that there has to be money made somehow, and it was going to do microtransactions. Now I'm hearing that, I forget what site it is, but this is going to be a paid game.
You have to pay to own the game. Correct, yeah.
So then I'm curious if we think that microtransactions are going to be a part of this game and how we feel about this. This is also a conversation we've been having in the OHKO server with varying results on it. So I don't know, like, I can monologue forever about this. So I don't know if you want to get your words in first.
Sure, yeah, I'll go first.
I will go off.
So I've changed my tune on microtransactions as I've matured, right? As I've gotten older and had an income. When I was 16, I thought it was so infuriating that the type of hat or the type of skin I wanted when I was playing Halo cost $2, and I had to ask my mom for $2 to put in the thing, or, you know, whatever, right? And now that I'm older, excuse me, like, I think there's still some things that are infuriating, specifically with Pokemon Unite. I think it is absolutely outrageously overpriced. There are skins in those games that are like $45 if you convert how much of the currency you need to purchase it, and like buying the units, like, I want to say champions, but whatever. It's just buying the champions in Unite is outrageous. It's like, no, I'm not spending $13 just to play Ho-Oh. Like, so things like that infuriate me. But like having your character skins, like, that stuff doesn't bother me. Like, there's such an extra world in Champions. Like, what if they have arenas for purchase, right? You can get like a I don't know, like a Steven Stone themed arena. I'm thinking like a Gen 3 arena for $5 or something to battle in, and your opponent has like a Gen 8 arena, and like all these, and your different outfits, like the different outfits you had for your avatars, or even in Pokémon Tournament, you had the different outfits and stuff. So I think there's a lot of harmless microtransactions that can really help the game, but if there's certain things that are just like too toxic, like, man, I gotta spend $20 for the season pass because that's the only way to make terrestrialization unlocked for, like, that's obviously terrible. But like hats and jackets and like different music, like if you can only get Gen 5 music through DLC purchase, like I'm fine with those.
Yeah, I think we're pretty aligned with that. Like, if there is any aspect of the game that you need to spend extra money on to play the game at any level at anyone else, that is bad, and I do not condone it. Whether it is terrestrialization, whether they're like, this Pokemon is shiny, or this is the only way you can get this Pokemon. Other than that, microtransactions all day, as long as they're unnecessary to compete, sure. Yeah. Let me put a stupid little hat on my Pokemon. I would pay so much money to put a stupid little hat on my Pokemon. The avatars, the stadiums, everything else. I would also pay stuff like fresh start mochis, you know, like ability patches, like that other stuff.
That's where you're getting into pay to win, though, right?
No, but because that is all stuff, as long as it's stuff that you can freely access. It is not paid, like,
that's a little murkier for me.
Nah. My opinion, I can load up my Switch right now, spend 5-10 minutes of my time, and get a fresh start mochi. So it is not an option that is blocked off to me whatsoever. I can freely access this. I can freely get it. I can freely put it on my Pokemon. And it's all fine and dandy. I would much rather throw 50 cents at the game and just get a fresh start mochi, because I hate the ogre ousting, and the amount of times that I've had to ask in either the OHKO server or somewhere else for someone to trade me that darn mochi because I am not going to go through the effort of getting it is crazy. Yeah. So it's still a free aspect of the game, but I would be very okay with like personally, I'd be okay with, let me throw 50 cents at the game to get this thing that I could get for free and just not have to do the free thing. I would be opposed for that being with anything Pokemon, by the way. I think for free items you already get from the game. And if any of it's only money access only, I think that's bad. But yeah. I don't think that there's any harm. I'm an adult. Like, let me throw 50 cents. Let me just spend
I think it's going to be more than 50 cents, because Pokemon has really not been great with their conversion rate in a lot of, if you play Pokemon Masters,
and I'm Canadian, so that's at least cost me like $4.
Like if you play Masters, if you play Go, if you play Unite, if you play like a lot of different Pokemon games have really not had strong conversions for their gem or crystal versus what they really are compared to other like we're big Riot game fans, right? Like we feel like we get more bang for our buck on that, except for the stupid $250 exalted skins. I'm sure Valorant
I don't know,
has
because
some of the same.
I've spent a good amount on like Pokemon Go, but like I still spent way more on Valorant, let me tell you.
Yeah, no, I know, but because Valorant is priced out better. Like when I play Go, it's like
one night
I'm not
was
playing
$60.
But I'm not spending $13 for 50 Ultra Balls in Pokemon Go. You know what I mean? Like in Unite, like I'm not spending $99 in their package or whatever. Like I don't have the numbers exactly in my head. Like I don't feel like I'm getting enough of the Unite currency out of $99. Like especially Masters. I tried to replay. I tried to like the prices in Masters. Like I'm gonna spend all this money just to get like 1 10 pull is just insane to me. So I don't trust Pokemon to have very like consumer friendly microtransaction currencies or exchanges, whatever.
I looked up my purchase history. Valorant, I've spent a little less than I thought. I have spent, try and take a guess of a rough ballpark.
Thinking maybe like 800, 900.
Maybe I don't feel so great about it. I have spent over 1,700.
Oh wait, but,
on this account
but
alone.
It came out like what? It came out like COVID or something, right? Valorant.
Yeah.
So in 4, you divide that by 4. That's not that bad.
Yeah, like I don't think then the amount of times I put into it, I have put about $300 in on various alt accounts for like skins too. So I'm around $2,000 for Valorant.
Yeah, that's really not that bad in 4 years. Yeah,
it's not bad. Yeah, I put the time into the game. It's a free game, you know. Like I feel okay about that. I've spent probably a couple hundred on like League too.
I've spent a lot. I mean, over 12 years, I've spent I'm not even Googling it. I refuse to Google.
That's true. But yeah, back to champions. Like as long as every part playable of the game is accessible by just buying the game, I personally don't care what else is behind paywall. As long as you get whatever game mode, you're able to compete at the same level as everyone else.
Yeah.
Mind your own business as I pay my 50 cents or $2 or however much for the Fresh Start Mochi, because you don't know where I got this Fresh Start Mochi. That doesn't make a difference to you. It doesn't matter, yeah. And like even the Fresh Start Mochis that I have, if you want to talk about like, oh, well, you now have an unfair advantage over someone who has now had to spend the time to go and get that. I have an unfair advantage anyways because I've mooched every single one.
Yeah, exactly. I have an unfair advantage because I have a Discord community that what were the barbecue things called? The
BBQs?
Yeah, the black not Black Academy. What's the actual name for the barbecue?
Blueberry Academy?
Blueberry
Academy Cuts. Yeah.
I have an advantage because we have a community where I logged in with 3 of our Discord members and put my controller down.
Yeah, me too. Which I did clarify I was doing that in advance, and if anyone else wanted my spot, thank you so much. I got so many points.
I'm not searching for those stupid dittos in the squares.
worst one ever. But then even like I have a lot of my own shinies that I have hunted because it's something that I enjoy. Anything that I don't have a shiny for, a friend of mine, Loving, has a complete shiny dex. You know the amount of times I've messaged him and I'm like, hey, can I borrow these 4 shinies? And he's like, yep. And then I'm like, okay, my friend also needs these 2. Can I have it? Yep. Okay, what about these legendaries? Yep. Like, I don't have to, like, I spend the time in the game because I want to spend the time in the game. I don't need to spend the time in the game because I have a lot of really great connections and a lot of people are really, really generous with what they're willing to help out with. So any like, oh, well, unfair advantages, that's going to be an inherent thing.
Just for the listeners, we're not trying to flex. What we're trying to say is if you're going to use the argument that things are unfair, nothing is fair inherently because somebody has more access inherently than other people. So we're not flexing that we know people. We're just saying even if you get rid of this, other people are still going to have an advantage over you because they know more people.
Yeah. If you add a 50-cent Fresh Start Mochi in the game, it levels the playing field. That's how I feel about it personally. You can either pay for it if you want. You don't have to pay for it if you don't want to. But at the end of the day, I am not doing the ogre ousting for this fresh start
Never.
mochi.
I'm
It's just
never
whether
ogre ousting
Pokemon gets my 50 cents
again in my life.
or someone passed me one. Like, you know? And anyone who has sent me one, I think Moggy sent me like 5. Moggy, you're the goat.
Moggy's
like,
a
honestly,
goat.
like, yeah, like, thank you, anyone who's helped out. But yeah, I feel like those type of that's why those type of microtransactions don't bother me, because
I will say I'm very anxiously anticipating our message from our boy Zoinks after I went after Unite and their transactions. I think Zoinks is he's typing away as he's listening to the podcast right now.
I've spent too much money on a Unite skin once or twice. I'll say.
I refuse. I'll buy the small ones for like 1,100 but even that, it's still like your brain should be like, okay, if this currency is like 1,000, roughly I should spend like $11 or $12 on it, right? Like just how your brain thinks, like it's just not. Like Unite is like 2,500 gems for $43, and I'm just making up numbers, but like to exaggerate, but like it's just the skins in the game are not worth $45.
See, like I don't know, like I'd more so compare it to like TFT or Valorant. It's like if I'm buying a cosmetic that I'm gonna see every day when I play the game every day, I'm actually getting more use out of that $50 skin in the game than one of the $50 plushies that's sitting on my shelf right now that I don't do anything with. Like,
That's fair.
Realistically, I am not a responsible adult. I'm going to throw this $50 away on something. If it is a mid skin in Unite or a stupid hat for my Pikachu in Champions, just let me, because it's going to the gutter anyways. Let's be real. Like, there's 14 Piplups right there. There's a $500 Piplup right there. Like, it's like these aren't like this. It isn't worth either, you know.
Game Freak is like on the phone with Riot right now, and they're just like, "How else can we get Sierra's money? She can't handle it. She doesn't deserve to have money.
You made fun
She's
of me
just
at the beginning before we even started this podcast. You made fun of me for wearing a different piece of Pokemon merch that I bought from EUIC.
I did not make fun of you. I did not make fun of you. I thought
you're
first
like,
of
that
all,
is another.
It looks
cool.
It was
nice.
That is an awesome sweatshirt.
Cool.
I had just noticed. It was like, wow, you bought
you
a lot of clothes.
You spent a lot of money at EUIC. Yes, I did.
It wasn't a judgment. It was an analysis. I was just seeing. I was just making a statement, not a judgment.
I'll make sure next week to wear a different sweater that I bought at EUIC that I haven't showcased.
Oh my god!
Are we getting judgment yet?
I think if it's 4 weeks in a row, I think I'll start to judge.
Nope. Well, I can do 4 weeks in a row.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. But
all right.
Let's wrap up on champions.
ZA.
Yes, I have to go first here. I have had a burning thought in my head for these days since it came. I'm like, I think people need to get their heads checked. I think people need to take IQ tests. I think we need a whole bunch of things to see what is wrong with people's brains. The people that are upset that Cyndaquil is not in the starter trio with Chikorita and Totodile.
Are you upset about this?
I've seen so many. I genuinely need you to get your brain examined. It was the starter in the last Legends game. It just got a regional variant. Why are you upset that Cyndaquil and like you're anticipating Cyndaquil to be the? It was just a starter. What is wrong with you?
And bro got canceled.
Well, not even that
Is
part.
everyone off the internet not to see about this Typhlosion stuff? There's absolutely not going to be anything going down that line any further, but like...
Even without the cancellation, it literally just was a regional starter. Why would you expect it to be there just because Chikorita and Totodile are there? Am I the crazy one?
I don't get why that's the issue in comparison to an issue that they picked 2 Gen 2 starters, which I don't actually have any personal qualms with. I think it's a little weird, but... Yeah, what do you think about
there's a lot of conversation about people upset that Cyndaquil is not there with Totodile and Chikorita. And like, am I in the Twilight Zone? Like, what world are you in? Why would they choose Cyndaquil 2 regional games in a row as a starter?
Yeah, that one's a little weird. Because like, the weirdest thing is that they picked 2 Johto starters. Like that's, yeah. What do we think about the starters? Like like I said, I don't really have any personal qualms with the fact they picked 2 Gen 2. I still think it's weird. I think that slot could have gone somewhere else. But...
literally the exact perfect statement to say. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a weird decision. Like I've always liked Chikorita. I think it's an adorable Pokemon. I know there's a lot of like fun Chikorita hater memes going online right now, which I'm still enjoying them, even though I do like Chikorita. But like it just like you have other options. It just seems like a weird decision to put two from the same generation, especially when Totodile is so significantly more popular than Chikorita, right? Like there could have been a world where I'm trying to think of like an underappreciated water type starter, like maybe Primarina or something, right? Or what's the first name of oh my god, why am I blanking on the Poplio, right? Like Tepig is underappreciated or underrepresented compared to the other two starters. Chikorita very much underrepresented compared to the other two starters. You could have had a whole series of 3 underrepresented starters, but then Totodile is very popular. Like Totodile is putting it, like you see memes of like Totodile putting the game on its back, like carrying the starters. Like it's so much more popular than the other two.
Yeah, like, because I agree that the other two make sense, because if I'm looking down the line of, like, Chikorita and what they could have replaced as a grass type, I actually really don't think that there is many options besides then Grookey, which is then, like, it's very
popular. Grookey is an incredibly popular.
Well, I also just think it's too new.
Yeah.
If that, like, makes sense. Obviously Rowlet's we've already got that as a starter. If we're looking at like the potential of like megas for these forms as opposed to regional variants, Bulbasaur's already had one.
Yeah.
Trico's already had one. And then my guess, I feel like it's a pretty fair guess, is that this game is going to give megas to the Gen 6 starter line. So
especially because it's in the future. That's the other huge story that we did not know, because Legends Arceus was in the past, and the way that the first trailer looked, we thought this was going to be a prequel to X and Y. The reveal that this is post XY, and AZ just has a job with his Floette running a hotel, and like the world has been influenced,
which seems very random, by the way,
with the Zygarde cells. Like that's a huge reveal because you can't. Some of the criticism of Mega Evolution and the regional variants in Legends Arceus is like, well, why are they not here in the present? And even with the past Pokemon, right? The past paradoxes is like, why is Switherwing not existent now? Or why is Hisuian Lilligant or Avalugg not existent now? At least if you make new Megas for the Kalos starters, you can't use that argument. Because the argument is, well, it's evolution. We have evolved with new Megas. So I think that's a really smart decision by them.
Yeah, so back to the starters thing, the two just seems weird. AZ with the hotel just seems so random, by the way. I feel like that was fanfare-esque. I really do hope we get more of the story in AZ stuff, but that's not how I kind of expected it.
I'm the other way around. I hope AZ is non-existent in the story. I hope he is just living his life as a hotel concierge with his friend Floette, and we just have like just a quick little cameo. I don't want AZ. I want him to be happy. He suffered for 3,000 years. You know what I mean? Like, I want him to just be living in Kalos, living his best life with his little buddy Floette.
I mean, you can also like be there for that with him living his best life, you know? Like, didn't say like, hey, I hope AZ's in the story so we can ruin his day. You know?
I just hope he's non-existent. Like, he's just a cameo and he says hi and then he goes back to living a normal life.
What do we think about the rest of the trailer? My original worries with the game being set purely in Lumoy City was the scale of everything. So seeing that they're expanding the city and how they were doing the wild areas to integrate Pokemon more into the city for them to live together, my first initial thoughts was, oh, this is kind of cool because it gives reason. My second thought is, I think this is going to get very tired very fast, depending on how they do it. There's only so many alleys you can go down where they're like, we converted this one for Pokemon. And it's like, what's going to be different here? There's an extra street light. There's a pond. There's a little water. There's a bush. What about a fire hydrant, right? So I'm still kind of worried about how that's set and like the scale of all of it. I do think there's cool possibilities with like abandoned buildings, maybe like caves underground, etc., that they could explore. It's just whether they choose to.
Yeah.
But I think my first impression of the game is I like the look of it a lot more than Legends Arceus. I am Legend Arceus #1 hater over here.
Till the day you die.
Yep, but this game looks a lot better. I like the battling mode better from what we've seen. I like the colors. I like the kind of the designs. I'm hopeful. I
think what works for us is you and I are two of Kalos' strongest soldiers, right?
I love Gen 6.
We love X and Y. Like, you and I are very uncommon in that opinion in the community, so it's very beneficial. They're playing to what we appreciate. So someone else might say this looks dumb, but to us it's like this looks awesome because this is the type of architecture, this is the type of color and design that we appreciate in the Pokemon game. So I'm very excited for the visuals of it. I don't know about the 1080p, 720p performance mode, yada yada yada. I'm just not going to sit here and act like an expert on graphics and visuals because I truly don't know a lot of the difference. And like, oh, this is poorly running because of yada yada. I don't know. So to me, it looks cool. I don't think it needs to look like, you know, the most pixels in the world to enjoy playing the game. I think some of the gameplay looks interesting to me. Like, did you see the part where like you hop from rooftop to rooftop like Assassin's Creed style?
No, I missed that.
You like I don't know if it's your Rotom phone or whatever, like you literally jump from one roof and then it becomes like a kind of hover thing that the character holds onto and jumps to another rooftop.
Okay.
So the puzzles are very, very much back in play, like for this. And Legends Arceus had puzzles too, and like we can get back to the puzzle JRPG-esque roots of Pokemon in this, so I'm excited for that. I am very curious about how the battling is going to work out, because is it going to be like kind of Ni no Kuni-esque, where like you're kind of throwing your familiar or your Pokemon out, right? And they're battling and you're kind of watching and rotating and moving around? Or are you physically controlling the Pokemon and like is your character left stick and Pokemon right stick and that's how you dodge? And like some of the things seem a little overcomplicated to me, and I wonder if a lot of our less experienced Pokemon players, let's say that, because not a lot of Pokemon players play other video games, so they might not be able to dodge roll like Dark Souls like the way that the game wants you to. I do wonder if people will find this battle system too difficult compared to traditional Pokemon.
I think as long as it's not a mandatory thing to master, but more so an optional to help your gameplay, it could be good. So I'm thinking back to friendship mechanics in the core games, to where you would survive a critical hit on 1 HP, or the burn would dissipate mid-match because your Pokemon didn't want you to feel sad, or like all of that stuff. None of that was ever necessary. And like that wasn't something you could control. Like, to be fair, the only thing you could control was the friendship levels with your Pokemon, which you would naturally get higher on as the game went on. But what I'm saying is like you didn't need that to win the game. So I'm imagining then with this battle system with like the dodges and stuff, it's something that can make your gameplay easier. But as long as it's not like if you're rolling up to whatever Elite Four, whatever, and your Pokemon's tanking every hit, but you're 10 levels higher than them and clicking the strongest move, you're still going to beat them in the end. Like, I think it should be fine. It's just like a more skillful way to play for those who want to go that route.
And I think these battles, like I've had conversation with friends that like, the trailer looks like the battles are more like the anime, right? Where like Ash says use Thunderbolt, and then you go to the other guy and he says dodge it, or like use Iron Tail in response, or like it seems like the timing of attacks is going to be just as crucial as to what attacks you use, and that excites me as like an old JRPG fan. Like for those who don't play the ATB system from Chrono Trigger and old Final Fantasy games with like action time, I forget what it's called, but like, you ever see an old JRPG where like the timer comes up and then you can click a move? You know what I mean? And like, so some characters can click moves faster than other characters. That's the ATB system in old JRPGs. And there's a spot, there's a spot in the trailer where Hippowdon starts its attack. Let's say it's Stone Edge. I don't know what it is. And it's a really long animation, and you see the Talonflame come in to charge. And by the time the Talonflame is about to hit, the animation finally finishes and it hits Talonflame before Talonflame attacks Hippowdon. So I wonder how crucial it is going to be to master animation times, because like if you have an animation that takes 7 seconds, well, that's easier for your Pokemon, the other Pokemon, to dodge out of it, compared to other attacks that have quicker animations are going to be more difficult to dodge.
Yeah, I'd be curious if they do actually show a little timer for that, because obviously gameplay footage isn't vital. I feel like that would be a nice little like easy thing. So yeah, I don't know. It looks interesting. I definitely think I like it more already than I like the Legends Arceus battling, which was just the same moves but different.
It already
Which is
feels
dumb.
more like a JRPG, which Pokemon has been this whole time, but I'm a big JRPG fan. It's just always been like kind of its own world, and now it is kind of realigning back to the genre a little bit more, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I don't think I have any other thoughts about
What about the avatars? Are you in on this theory that our mom and Sycamore got married?
Oh, I didn't see the theories about it being the mom. I just saw the theory about the
Just being Sycamore's kid or something, or his descendant? Because it would make sense, right? Because of what's her name, Irida, and the Diamond guy are the descendants of Diamond and Pearl people, and then
and they have the same
Volo's descendant of Cynthia, right?
Same color eyes, like originally. Like the only thing that worries me about that is I want cosmetic features. I want to be able to go in and just like change absolutely everything about the character,
especially with Kalos, with the creation of,
because that was the one where you could do the most. Like Kalos oh my goodness, it was so good.
The boutique shop, still top 5 tracks of all time. The boutique theme from X and Y.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, so I would be like, I would just hope that they're not like, oh, you're Sycamore's kid, so you gotta like look like it and like stick to that. I hope they'll be like, you're Sycamore's kid, but like you're a free independent woman, like you can do whatever you want with your hair, like you can put in color to contacts if you want and just do whatever style wise. So
I do think it's funny, like, I've seen tweets of like, wow, these are the most oralist avatars that we've had. Like they're like, just don't look cool, they don't look hard. I'm like, have you seen how nerdy some of our avatars have looked throughout 30 years? Like we have not always had cool drip from the avatar.
I also think like if they do have customization options, that like it's okay if they don't have drip. I would also argue they have more drip than the characters in Scarlet and Violet with your one of 4 uniforms.
Yeah, for sure. But that's about like, I guess that's a different like promotional art, right? Like this is what the characters are. That's what they're going to look like in Pokemon Masters. That's what they're going to look like in all official artwork. And like the hat is kind of lame. It does not match color wise. Like especially the girl's white and red hat, it just doesn't match her outfit in my opinion.
That's just very Pokemon though, to have like almost a completed outfit and just be like, psych. You actually did get dressed in the dark this morning. This doesn't match at all.
Yeah, that's true. Other stuff from the trailer, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I love that Megas are back. I do. Okay, here's our last question on it, because we've had a long episode, which we appreciate all our listeners who've made it this. You're the best, including Wolf. Wolf's going to listen to,
No, rip his run. If he's actually timing the run along with like the podcast length, like you're hooped, buddy.
So thank you all for getting us or listening with us this long. The last question for you, Sierra, is will the starters, the Totodile, Chikorita, and Tepig, will their third forms be a regional variant, or will they just be the regular third forms and the mega evolutions? I don't think they're going to get a regional variant and a mega. I think you got to get one. So which one do you want the starters to have? A regional variant or a mega?
So I don't know. So the one thing that is interesting is in the trailer showing Chikorita, they showed Chikorita with a fairy type move that it can't actually learn, which then leads to believe at the end of whatever evolution, like it is going to be a grass fairy type. Whether that gets added as a mega or whether that is a regional variant, I don't know. But the fact that, because I don't think megas necessarily change the move pool of the Pokemon, but having a different final evolution would. Which makes me believe that it's going to be regional forms for the 3. Chikorita being like final, like Megadium being Grass Fairy, Emboar being Fire Steel, and then Totodile like
a lot of people saying Water Ground, like Swampert, because he's an alligator or crocodile, whatever.
I would say it would be Water Dragon or Water Dark, but I think Water Dragon.
So the one thing with Dragon that's tough is you can't really put Dragon on starters because it ruins the Fire, Water, Grass aspect of weakness, because Dragon negates the weakness because it resists all of the elements. So it's tough to make a Water Dragon because then now the person that chooses Chikorita now doesn't have the type effectiveness over it. You get what I'm saying?
Well, no, because you have the Fairy. You have the Fairy type effectiveness over it because
but then how do you complete the wheel? Like
I don't think it is like.
But it does. That's how it's worked for 30 years. Every starter has been a wheel.
I don't think it
even the new set.
Wheel.
right? Even the new set. You have the thing about like, so remember X and Y had the double wheel, right? It was fire and sight. Like Delphox was weak to Greninja in both water and dark, and like Greninja was weak to Chestnut in both grass and fighting.
Water fighting, no?
So how do you get?
Because then it would be effective versus steel, steel versus fairy, fairy versus fighting.
That would be cool. I'm down for that. I just think if it's water, if it's dragon, then you do dragon fairy. But then what do you do for fight? Would you still do fire steel? Because dragon doesn't beat steel, right?
It's more so the fact that like they can do, and they have done like little changes with like dragon depending on how things are. So like thinking to all the terrains, like all the terrains boost except for Misty Terrain, which doesn't boost fairy, but in fact lowers dragon.
Lowers dragon,
right?
yeah. And
so
grass
like,
lowers ground or whatever.
Yeah. So like there's like little changes they make. So I don't think it's completely out there. But if we're sticking to the type theory, then fighting would make sense. Which also, like, Totodile's final evolution being water, like fighting would also be like go pretty hard, right?
You could see it for alligator with punching, yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah, like it could be cool. It could be cool.
Yeah, and I don't want water dark because we just had Hisui and Samurott as water dark. You know,
it wouldn't fit in the wheel if we're doing the Embor as the fire steel.
But then also we did just have Quaquaval who was water fighting, but I don't know, whatever. At this point,
I mean, we've also had how many firefighting and fire ghosts?
Okay, that's my hot take. Is that I so badly want Embor to stay firefighting, and they're like, because everybody's like, oh, they have a chance to correct their mistake they made 15 years ago, and they just like double down on it and like, nah, baby, fourth, he gets a variant, but he's still firefighting, fourth firefighting starter, baby. Oh, so
the variation that I saw of that was they have the opportunity to do the funniest thing, and it was like 4 firefighting and 3 fire ghosts.
Fire ghost, yeah.
So because it was originally firefighting, they could make it a fire ghost and just
that'd
like
be so good. I hope they do that.
I hope they don't, but also if they did, I would kind of giggle.
I would respect
it would be a little funny.
Yeah, if Embor just keeps being the third of a fire trio, like, oh god, that'd be so good. Yeah, we have a long time to discuss Legend ZA, and it's also not going to affect VGC immediately because it's going to take Pokemon Home a while to get it integrated. Yeah. So
I know we had talked about maybe doing a question of the week, but we did ask Wolfe a lot of questions. Do we want to skip it for next week? Do we want to do a quick who's winning Vancouver prediction? Do we
let's make that our. Is that this weekend? I'm just so. I mean, bizarre.
We're recording early.
Yeah.
Because that worked, but it will be coming out right before Vancouver, so we can make our predictions on who's going to win Vancouver.
So Vancouver is March 8th and 9th, correct? Is that what you're saying? Okay, cool. Yeah. So, sorry, everyone. I've just been out of it at this point. All right, so our question of the week comes from Sierra Dawn. And for anyone who wants to ask us a question, join our Discord in the description down below. We always answer the thing. She says, hey, long-time listener, first-time asker. And she says, who's going to win the Vancouver Regional Championships? I tried to just make it like our old system.
All right. I appreciated it.
Because Navji's going to play. He's Canadian, right? He doesn't play a lot of the American events. I imagine he'll be there.
I think he is, but I'm not 100% sure just because I know that usually he's pretty busy. But if he is to play an event, this would be it.
So, all right. So I'll say NJ is my answer. If he can't make it, I'll back it up and I'll say Fiona because I want to root for a Canadian to win. So.
All right. I'm going to say, I'm also on the Canadian theme. I'm going to say Marcus Dion. He just got second at Merida Regionals. He got second at the one that Carson won and then top 4 like right after that. And I know that for every Canadian, winning a Canadian event is obviously like that extra special thing, right? So yeah. I also have eyes on the storyline of James Evans going up against Abdullah. Both of them, because technically I don't believe Abdullah competed in Vancouver last year for the title defense. So Semper technically hasn't lost Vancouver, and then James obviously is going in for the title defense. But if Semper did compete last year, this is his first attempt at defending or taking back the title, which I think is kind of cool. So I'm kind of keeping an eye out on them. So for both of them, I know like they'll be going for the title defense and like looking to go far, but I don't want to just predict like this is the past winner. I want to go outside of that. So I'll say Dion. But
So, yeah, I don't want to just take the easy route, so I'm going to choose the best Canadian player by championship points so far, Marcus Dion. Like, you still chose a pretty standard answer, which is fine. I respect it. I'm just saying you didn't do a curveball out there.
Well, I didn't want to go for the cliche answer. I didn't say I wanted to like go for like an off the wall answer. You know, like just not going for the cliche.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
I respect it. I think it would be cool if a Canadian wins. Obviously, USA, but I think it'd be a good storyline. So have fun out there. I don't know who else is. Who else is? Scott's going to be there, right?
Yeah, it'll be. The announcement hasn't gone up by the time this episode does. So I'm
no,
it is. But
no, it's out. It's on the website already.
Is it? Because I checked the website and I didn't see it.
No, it's on the new website. Remember that has like the photo of the casters.
I tried looking that up and I couldn't actually like properly search it, so I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going on.
I saw your face. I saw you were there. Okay. I think Jake is there.
Me and Jake are going to be casting together. We casted Toronto together, so that was a lot of fun. So we get to go for the run back. And then Scott and Gabby are casting, and then Rose is going to be host.
Okay, cool. Solid crew.
I've been trying to convince everyone to wear like all denim Canadian tuxedos, and Rose was the one to say no, and now she's the only one on board. So like, shame on absolutely everyone else. By the way,
tell my dear friend Scott that he needs to bring out the Canadian tuxedo. It's a must.
We've been trying, but yeah. But all right, this has been a super, super long episode. So we hope that you enjoyed. If you're still here at this point, make sure to thumbs up the video. Subscribe to the channel, almost at 2K, which is super, super exciting. I think a little Wolf Effect is probably going to put us over 2K.
It's a nice little bump. Yeah.
He only has how many subscribers? But no, we do a podcast every single week. We talk about all of the different stuff in terms of the tournaments, Pokemon news, etc. So yeah, if you listen along, you'd be great to that. Make sure if you're interested as well, there's a lot of awesome people in the OHKO Discord as well. That's where our questions of the week come from. Thank you again all so much for listening. I'll see you guys at Vancouver, and we'll see you both next week on our next episode of OHKO. Take care.